11 o'clock, I'm going to invite our board members up to the dais. We're going to go ahead and officially get this meeting called to order. Thank you for those in our presence, and also we have several listening online. So thanks so much for being with us this evening. Today is Tuesday, December 6th. We're going to start by introducing who is here with Clark.
Clark Nelson.
Chris Wynn.
Nicole McDermott.
Connie Burgess.
Julie Jackson.
Todd Hauber.
Rich Nye.
And Karen Winder. Once again, thanks for being here. As way of introductions, do we have, let's see, Michelle Jones from GEA. Are you here? Who do you have with you tonight? Awesome. Thanks for being here. GAEOP, our office professionals. Gaina, who do you have with you?
It's just me tonight.
Just you. Awesome. Thanks for being here. Gespa. So we have our educational support professionals. Not with us this evening. Middle managers. Anybody from our middle managers? Hello. Who do you have with you?
Russ Stopper, Rich Jorgensen.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here this evening with us. Our foundation, our Grant Education Foundation. Any reps? Not tonight. And last but definitely not least, our PTA. Hello. Thank you for being here, Stacy. Anybody with you tonight?
No.
To flying solo. Awesome. Welcome. All right, we're going to move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to invite Josh Leroy, principal of Olympus Junior High, to come and lead us in the pledge.
All right, thank you. On three. 1, 2, 3. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to our reverence, which we'll turn the time over to Ben Horsley to introduce them.
Board members, as I introduce our reverence, I'd like to invite you to come down off the stand. Tonight we'll be pleased to hear several a cappella numbers from our Cottonwood High choral vocal group led by our teacher Cecil Sullivan. I'm going to turn the time over to him to introduce our numbers.
La la la.
Do we have any parents here of those fine young singers? Hey, thanks so much. You're awesome. Well, that was a lot of fun. I like that. A lot of energy. All right, Ben, let me pull up my... Okay, here we go. We're going to move on to recognitions. Are you starting or is Noel starting?
Depends which one you pull up first.
Well, since you're already there, let's do Skyline's high school soccer.
Absolutely, and again, great reverence there from Cottonwood High. I wanted to recognize them. That was spectacular. And now we're going to turn time over to Mitch Nurden, principal of Skyline High, to introduce our girls' Skyline soccer team.
If I could have our lauded girls soccer team please come up. If you guys will just stand right here and feel really stupid while I tell a story, it would be awesome. Because you're not stupid, you're awesome. Okay, so here's the story. Season starts and our sights are very high because we know how good we are, right? And you'd go to a game and the ball, like we would possess the ball the whole time. Like 90% of the time you're like, we are completely dominating. And then the end of the game, we're like, we lost 3-1. What the heck's going on? So I'd call up my assistants. I'm like, how could you let them lose? And they're like, we're the assistant principals. We didn't do anything. And I'm like, we can't let them lose. Well, little by little, we kind of win some games. They kind of get some energy. We go into the state playoffs as the 10th seed. There are 9 teams ahead of us. And these girls start playing their game. And they battle, and they win close ones. And we get to this state championship game, and we are playing the evil bountiful. And we are so excited, and we're just dominating this game again. We own the ball the whole time. And by the end, it's tied. It's tied. Oh my goodness. So we go to overtime. We're there so long, the bus with the cheerleaders, they have to leave. So the cheerleaders have to leave because we're playing so long. It ends and we're still tied. Oh no, we're going to penalty kicks. Now, Miss Kinghorn, raise your hand. Miss Kinghorn decides to have the game of her life. The first kick goes this way and she jumps and she blocks it. And then we score 1-0. The second kick comes and she jumps that way and she blocks it. 2-0. And we end up winning by 2 goals. Way to go, girls. Woohoo! Come introduce everybody. She's going to introduce everybody.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm one of the varsity captains, and this is Jenna Nichols, Clara Love, Ella Hall, Lily Hall, Grace Kinghorn, and Allie Garver.
Congratulations, Ellie. Good job, you guys. You're so awesome. Great job. Dang, I wish I was at the game. That sounds amazing. Great job. Congratulations. Great fight. Good job. That was a great story. Awesome. Good job.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have Mitch tell all the stories about like my delicious dinner. Like he can make that pretty good.
Your 2022 Skyline High Girls State Soccer Champions.
All right, we need the parents of these.
We failed to mention that that is a back-to-back championship as well, so congratulations again.
Yep. Good work. Way to represent. We're so proud of you. I would like to ask the parents of these fine young athletes to be recognized for their support. Do we have them in the house? If you are, any parents, stand up. Who was cheering? Oh, there you go. Well, there you go. Awesome. Thank you for supporting your students. All right, we are going to go on to recognize state champs and academic all-states.
Yes, so we will turn some time over to Noelle Converse to introduce our academic all-states.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Board President, board members, and all of our esteemed guests. Thanks for coming tonight. To continue on from last month with Academic All-State, we have a continuation of some names. So I'm just going to call your name, and you'll come up much in the same way the soccer team did. I just want to do a little bit of an introduction. Earning Academic All-State requires years of dedication, not only to athletics, but to academics and achieving academic success. And this award is given to student athletes who not only contribute to the success of their team, they excel in the classroom. The average cumulative GPA for the students being honored tonight is 3.71. It's clear that you have all put in many, many hours of hard work, both on the field and in the classroom. And we are lucky to have you as student athletes who model success. We really appreciate you and your parents. So I will now list all the names. We'll start with girls tennis. Emily Biaggi from Skyline. Phoebe Chung, Skyline. Sylvie Dance, Skyline. Kala Jordan, Skyline. Anna Morgan, Skyline. Emma Romney, Skyline. Sally Swenson, Skyline. And Arlie Williams, Skyline. In cross country, Larkin Handcuff, Kearns. Lucinda Madsen, Skyline. Rosie Nielsen, Skyline. Jackson Currett, Skyline. Andrew Jepson, Skyline. Trevin Oldham, Skyline. And Danielle Twin, Skyline. Football, Jared Prince, Skyline. Joseph Johnson, Skyline. Justice Fonts, Skyline. And volleyball, Eve Wilson, Skyline.
Excellent. Congratulations. Good job working hard.
I just want to want everyone to understand that this is a continuation of last month, and they were invited, so we're just seeing those who couldn't attend. So. Congratulations again. Great job.
Academic All-State champions. Let's see a stand so we can recognize you, or do we have any parents of those young students? There you go.
Oh, and Ben wants me to remind you have swag outside waiting for you, so you're welcome to leave and go collect your swag. Okay, next.
Are we doing state champs?
We're done with all those.
Oh, we're done with all those. Oh, that's me. Okay, we're going to invite Rich to, nope. That's you, right?
It is.
Oh, Noel. Oh, I have that
Cards?
wrong in my notes. I'm sorry, Noel.
No,
Noel's
you're
going to
fine.
go on with another recognition of our Christmas card winners.
Perfect, yes. Last year, we started a tradition, and this was really spurred by Superintendent and I and our board, to start to create some holiday cheer by collecting great artworks from our student body and then conducting a little bit of a contest. So it was a great success last year, but this year we quadrupled. We had hundreds and hundreds of participants, and we extended it to all grade levels. So we really see this as a growing tradition for Granite School District that continues to promote the arts for how our board really values art in Granite School District. And this is just one small way we do that. So I'll introduce the three winners of the art contest. And like I said, this goes through tiers of judging. So we start with collecting all of the art from the teachers who help to support and mentor the young artists. And then our art specialists in the district do a first round of vetting. And then finally it goes to Superintendent and I, and he usually wants to select every single one. And then we have to talk him into just narrowing it down to several. So I will start by introducing our youngest artist, Eliana Gu, who's a 5th grader from Morningside Elementary. And she's being presented with her original artwork that is framed, and then some custom cards that she can hand out to friends and family at home.
Congratulations.
While she's making her way around, can her parents stand up and family so we can recognize you as well?
Okay, our middle level winner is a 7th grader from Benyon Junior High, and her name is Christina Ong. So come on up, Christina.
Congratulations. So proud. Great job.
So proud of you. Good job.
These cards are sent out to all of Granite School District employees, and Dr. Nye also sends them out to his colleagues across the country. So they really get to share in the wonderful artwork of our students.
All right, can we have her support that's here? Her parents, whoever's here.
Her teacher,
supporting her.
Erin.
There you go. Awesome. Congratulations.
Okay, and last, our senior high winner is a 12th grader from Granger High School, Eileen Madrid. Come on up.
You'll get your picture. So much. Hey, go Lancers all the way. Congratulations. Just block me.
Great job.
invite your family or parents or support. Who's here with you?
Who's here with you, Eileen? There you go.
Excellent. Okay. Congratulations.
Okay.
All right.
And we have one more recognition. And this recognition comes to us from the Utah Science Teaching Association. And it's presented to Jefferson Junior High Science Team for Outstanding Middle School Department. I'll tell you a little bit about this award before I introduce the specifics. Basically, this award is delivered by this association. And the way they describe these teachers is that Jefferson's science team provides opportunities for all of their amazingly diverse students to succeed in science classroom. They volunteer countless hours to perfect their teaching craft and engage in science professional development and endorsements. Their teaching expertise and passion ensures that students at Jefferson engage in activities that make learning and doing science interesting and relevant. Their efforts were recognized by the Utah Science Teaching Association for the 22-23 school year. So I will list their names, and I think all but one who's tending a sick child was able to come. So thank you, team. It's Pamela Tafili, Anna Heath, Brad Holscher, Margaret Miles, Sydney Moffett, and Emily Olaya. Come on up.
Thank you for your efforts. Thanks for doing such great stuff for us kids, you guys. You guys are awesome.
I recognize you. Okay, congratulations.
Thank you so much for all your
Congratulations. Thanks so much for the work you're doing. Thank you. You are an Excel award.
Yep.
Okay, see, I remember faces, not names. What an awesome award. Thanks, teachers, for working so hard. Before we go on to our last recognition, we'll invite Rick to come up. He's going to do our recognition for our top MGP schools. But before I do that, Mayor Dolly is in the house, and I failed to recognize him. Where are you? There he is. Okay, welcome to our meeting. Sorry I missed you earlier.
Board, I'm happy to present tonight another teacher recognition as a whole school recognition. And this is for, we did elementary schools last month. These are secondary schools this month. This is academic growth based on end of year assessments. Let me take a second to explain the math behind this award. What we look at is student growth, and students generate a student growth percentile, which is a ranking from 1 to 99 that explains a comparison. So for example, a student with an SGP of 85 has scored as well or better than 85% of that student's academic peers. A percentile ranking of between 35 to 65 would be considered moderate growth. An SGP of 66 or above would be considered high growth. These individual SGPs at the student level are lined up lowest to highest to arrive at a median growth percentile, or MGP. That is used to explain growth at a school level. So a school can be assigned an MGP based on the growth of all the students in the school. Tonight we have two of our highest MGP junior high schools and our highest MGP high school that we'd like to recognize and have come up. And I'm going to start with the junior highs. If we have principals and staff members who will come up, let's start with Evergreen, who had an MGP of 54. Ryan and your team, come on up.
Please tell your staff we are so thankful for their efforts.
Congrats. Pass along our thanks.
Thank you.
Make sure they all get a picture with that trophy.
Staff members in a picture with a trophy. Great job, Evergreen.
Our next junior high is Olympus Junior High with a MGP of 58. Josh and your team, if you'd come up, Evergreen Junior, Olympus Junior High.
I'm so excited to see you guys. Congratulations, you guys. Thank you so much for all your
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I have to recognize you. Thanks for being
so
here.
much. It feels so great to see all of you guys. Congratulations. You guys are so awesome.
Thank you for all you do. Thank you. It's awesome to so many of you are here. Thanks for being here.
Great
tonight.
job.
Congratulations on Congratulations.
I know it feels like a
I know it feels like you've been playing that for years.
Congratulations, you guys. I'm so thrilled. Well deserved. Well earned.
I miss you guys.
One, two, three. I love the energy. Let's just keep that going.
Keeping it going with one more. With a MGP of 64, we'd like Skyline High and Mitch to come up, if you would, those who are here.
All right, Skyline. Raise the roof. That's right. That's right.
I love you. Great job. Nice to see you. Great job. Congratulations.
I love your energy.
Great job. So proud of you guys. Amazing. It's a great pleasure to see all these leaders here.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Well done. That's a hard award to win. Congrats. Thanks, Mitch. Again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Jill, you get principal. Okay, we're a little unethical, so we're going to rise through as we get our.
Yeah, we're going to rise through. Perfect.
Nicole.
Just as a reminder, those are traveling trophies, so we come back every year. So
They're supposed to have
we expect
candy in
those
them
back.
when they get returned.
Great job, guys.
Thank you so much for all your hard work and congratulations for winning the trophy and drive home safe. It looks like most of you are out of here.
Bye.
Congrats. Thanks for the hard work you do. Next on our, I like her. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have granted elected official participation time. The only elected official in the audience is Mayor Dolly. I'm just looking at you to see, are you here to just listen or would you like to speak? Just listen. Got it. Okay. Next, we have citizen participation time, patron participation time. We have two that have signed up, but we're going to move them over to the public hearing because their comments are in regards to our population analysis study. So that is Michelle and Sherry. Are you guys both understanding? Okay, I didn't want you to think that we were putting you off. So we are aware that you're going to speak in just a little bit. Okay, so moving next on the agenda, we have our consent items. These items have been up for review since Thursday from our board members, and I'll entertain a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the table to approve the items contained within the consent agenda. Any concerns, questions, or discussions from the board?
I actually wanted to make an amendment to the agenda, but I'm pulling it up because I was too, the consent
The
agenda.
consent, okay. In the minutes?
To the minutes. Let me just pull, okay, so it's the October 4th meeting, and underneath the PAC committee.
Wait, it's the October 4th? Or November 4th?
November 4th.
I was going to say October 4th are already approved.
Thank you for
Okay.
making sure to correct that. November 4th. I would just like to add the statement, Julie Jackson asked for an analysis of how Mill Creek's DLI program would look at the other Evergreen feeder schools. I'd just like to add that to the minutes.
Okay, so noted. So we have an amendment, we have an item up for approval, to the items to approve on the consent agenda items with that amended statement added. Is the second still, who seconded that?
I did.
Are you still okay with the second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, any questions or concerns with that amendment or any other items on the consent? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Now we are moving on to our Population Analysis Committee recommendations. We're going to invite Steve Hogan and Ben Horsley to lead us in the discussion. Let me walk you through how it's going to go this evening so everyone's on the same page. We're going to have Ben and Steve walk us through the presentation. This is the data that they've collected. We've been studying this for the past 10 months, and they're going to bring the best, some updated information even from last month. Once they complete their presentation, and during the presentation, I'm going to ask board members to hold their comments and questions and write them down so they don't forget. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to our public hearing, and we're going to open that up for those who have signed up. If you are here and would like to speak at that public hearing, there is a sign up out in the hall. We'd kindly ask you to go sign up so that we can make sure we do not miss anybody who wishes to speak regarding the Population Analysis Committee recommendations this evening. So if you haven't done that, you didn't want to speak, it is set out in the hall, and Ben's happy to help you with that. Then once the public hearing closes, we will open it back up for discussion from board members, which will then ultimately lead to an action item at the end of that discussion. So we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page, and with that, we will turn it over to Steve.
Thank you. Board President Winder and board members, superintendency and patrons, those behind me and those online, my name is Steve Hogan. I'm the Director of Planning and Boundaries. Ben Horsley will be joining in just a second. And yes, we're here to go over what could be final action. We had the first reading, of course, last month, and we're back to, I'll basically give you a brief explanation of where we are and how we've gotten to this point, but perhaps with an emphasis on a return and report type emphasis on where we are since the last board meeting. So let's jump right in. Again, I won't spend too much time unless the board would like for me to review certain areas. Please stop me as you want. Just a reminder to all those, the board knows this really well, but I always want to give this emphasis, and that is there is a process, and the process is very important. We are guided by two main things in the process for population analysis studies, and that is a combination of state statute, which gives us some good timelines, and board policy. We are happy to have this process and policy to help guide us. It helps us, it helps the patrons, it gives us just that, some guidelines. You can see in this infographic, many people are familiar that we started this. It's a calendar year process. We started almost this time last year, last January, early February. We've had opportunities for feedback, and I'll show you that again in just a moment. Until at the bottom, you can see the October through December section, where again last month we had the first reading, and now tonight the second reading or perhaps final action. Just for those, again, a reminder, this process involves a significant amount of feedback, as it should, for such important decisions. These are some of the outreach efforts we had in the spring, the early months of the process up until June. Those included open house meetings, 3 large meetings with anywhere from dozens to hundreds in attendance. We went 3, 4, almost 5 hours in some of those meetings. school community council meetings for each of the schools involved, additional requested meetings, and there are others that are not listed here. So that was early on in the process. And of course, we had 2 studies in the beginning. And then in June, we narrowed that down, the board, we narrowed that down to the 1 study after the one was paused, our current study. Then after that, in the fall, we again had open house meetings with many in attendance. Now we reached out again and had follow-ups with the school community councils, additional requested meetings and follow-ups. You can see I won't go over all of these, but PAC meetings, board presentations, superintendency, curriculum directors, all of those are part of this process. In all, I think we counted between 80 and 90 meetings in this process. And that doesn't include all the individual meetings. Finally, other communications you can see here, from postcards mailed, text, email messages out to others, other communications from the schools amount to tens of thousands of efforts, if you will, parts of our communication process and feedback. This was, as a reminder, not just a one-way communication, but two-way at least, so that everybody can communicate. So I think it's important to understand that and understand how we got to this point in the study we're in. We are reporting, I am reporting, and I say when I say we, I refer to Ben and I, to the goal, or the Van Winkle 700 East study. As a reminder, the purpose or the goal of this study was to create elementary schools in this study area closer to the optimal enrollment. And that is, when we say optimal enrollment, what we really want to emphasize is not just or really about the enrollment of the school, but the goal is to get to that minimum 3 teachers per grade level in the elementary schools. That's critical. We know from best practice and our data over the years that for an elementary school to have the minimum of 3 teachers per grade level is very, very important for student outcomes. So that was the goal, and that's how we ended up with making this recommendation. Of course, we had three closure options to begin with early in the kind of the middle of the process in the summer. Options 3A, 3B, and 3C. The one that the PAC recommended last month was option 3C, and that is closing Twin Peaks, Spring Lane, and Mill Creek elementary schools. You can see on the map, and I can go over this map again if you want, although I know the board has seen it many, many times. But what happens in this map, which students are recommended, proposed to go where, and all the lines and all the arrows and circles and whatnot on this map, I think have been rehashed quite a few times. But again, let me know if you want to go over any of that. But mostly, large part of Twin Peaks goes to Woodstock. The Twin Peaks FLS unit, I believe it is, special education unit, will come to Wilson Elementary. A large portion of Spring Lane will come over to Oakwood, along with the Chinese dual immersion program, would be the landing spot for that program. Keep in mind that, again, we have parts of going up, if you will, heading north, a small portion still coming to Oakwood or going to Oakwood from Driggs, the Turnberry Apartments, the portion up by Brickyard Plaza, and so on. One of the main points of emphasis at the end of last meeting, or really during last meeting, was questions from the board and from the community, but really from the board, about what happens with the Spanish dual language program, dual language immersion program at Mill Creek Elementary, and where do they land and why? It's a big decision. As they all are. So that's what I want to spend time on for the next few minutes. Any questions up to this point?
They're holding their questions.
I can tell. They're ready. So in that vein, these are some of the additional outreach efforts regarding Spanish DLI since the last board meeting. Ben and I went back out and visited with the community councils at Walker, Wilson, Rosecrest, Lincoln, Moss, and Penn. Even though, of course, as you'll see in a second, we had already talked to each of these communities, but it was important to follow up to make sure that we did not forget anything, that we could recap and make sure they understood and we understood each other about what the recommendations are. Did we miss anything? A last chance to review with those communities. We held a large community meeting at Penn Elementary, where we had quite a few in attendance, and we spent a while answering lots of questions, resolving concerns. Had great feedback at that meeting. Then a meeting with the staff at Penn, the teachers and paras. It did not include the principal, by the way, and we kind of wanted that by design, so the staff felt very free just to be as honest and frank with Ben and I as they could, and they were. And I say to their credit, because they asked us some good hard questions, and we appreciated that. Another large meeting at Mill Creek Elementary with the DLI families. Wanted to get their feedback, what their thoughts were on our recommendation. Again, this is all after the November board meeting. And so great time and well done by Principal Amber Clayton. Mill Creek City Council, I was not there that night. Ben went back to answer any questions that Mill Creek City Council had regarding these recommendations, and felt good about the answers they received by the time Ben left. A survey of the Mill Creek DLI families, not just a survey to see what their thoughts were, to try to get really a commitment to see who would in fact come based on the proposal, who would come to Penn as part of the DLI program. Then finally, there were some written responses that Ben and I gave back out to about 25 to 30 at least questions that came in from the Penn and Evergreen communities. There may have been others, but those two communities in general, as a follow-up to the large meeting we had there. So those are some of the, key additional outreach efforts. Now, I'll add a few of these others. The letters of assurance, or the letter of assurance that went out, and Ben, add anything as you want, but they've been shared with the affected communities. These letters outline the efforts to hold the schools harmless where possible while taking on the additional programming.
I would just add, with respect to that, we've had additional communications with some of those school community council leadership and the principals themselves, additional meetings both at Oakwood and in coordination with Mill Creek and Penn's admin team to review what those assurances are and kind of make sure that we were all on the same page about what expectations would be moving forward and that we're supporting these changes appropriately.
Thank you. Thanks for adding that. I can't remember all of those, and I'm sure there were those and perhaps even a few more. Staffing. Human Resources has and will continue to work with staffs affected by these changes. Transition teams, school and district level personnel, as well as community stakeholders have already begun some initial transition meetings. So I emphasized initial, and I would say that same emphasis with Human Resources. Ben and I have said maybe 100 times in the last 30 days that nothing is done yet. Until after this meeting and the board makes a decision, there is not a final decision. However, transition has to at least begin in some sort. And as the community suggested, and we keep reemphasizing, if the board decides to not go this route, so be it. But if they do, we feel like there's enough transition that needs to take place that some of those conversations have been had. The same with Human Resources, with Patrick and his group going out to talk to teachers, to answer their questions. That's an important part of the process, and Patrick has said the same thing over and over and over, that until the board makes a final decision, nothing is for sure, but just in case, here we are to answer your questions. And I think that's an important part of the process. Finally, I added this summary table, if you will, to help guide a conversation that we've had with the PAC all along. It kind of says some of the same things that I've just said and I've said over and over, but perhaps looking at this table can help clarify any of that. And again, be glad to take questions as you see them. But you, of course, see on the left the schools, Lincoln, Moss, Penn, Rosecrest, Walker, and Wilson, that were all considered as landing spots for the Spanish DLI program from Mill Creek. These are some of the main factors Not all the nuances are here, but I think some of the main factors are. Looking at current adequate building capacity. In other words, do they have the size of the building and the capacity to be able to handle another program? The number of students that need to come over. Now, in some cases, yes is a positive and no is a positive, or vice versa, and that's what I tried to use the red and the green to emphasize. Yes isn't always necessarily a positive here. The minimum enrollment. We've talked many, many times about what a minimum enrollment best practice should be to add or begin a DLI program in a school. Now, that's not the case in some of our schools. We know that by tough experience over the last 12 to 15 years, what that should look like now. But knowing that, we did not want to saddle a school with a program if they did not have the enrollment to support it. And you can see the yeses and nos there. The 25 plus languages spoken, this may take a brief explanation, but a lot of people assume that if there is a school with multiple languages, not just 2 or 3, but many, many, you can see there, some of these are 35 plus. But I think the minimum in this list was 25, so we said 25 plus languages spoken. Is that a good thing? Maybe in some cases, but if you're considering adding a language program, a Spanish language program, and so many of the students enrolled, English is their second language as it is, and they're trying to learn English to be able to succeed. Spanish is, and the Spanish gets a huge emphasis in the school, and we want Spanish speakers in the dual language program. That's not necessarily a positive. In fact, quite frankly, it's not in most of these schools. So that was a kind of an eye-opener even to Ben and I to talk to teachers and staff and principals to understand the impact of many, many languages at one school and how that actually could have a negative impact on starting a DLI program. Do they have a current program? Do they have a current Spanish DLI? And obviously, Penn was the only one that had that, and that kind of goes, and I'll go quickly. We looked at distance. That seems like a simple thing, but it's a big deal to a lot of students. We heard that over and over and over. Penn is close. If you catch the one light, you're there in 3 minutes from going to Mill Creek. So there's not much difference in the drive, especially for a lot of those that are coming from outside of the boundary or in the district. So that was a huge plus. But finally, we really looked at the big picture, and that's what was least disruptive. And I want to emphasize that word least, not disruptive at all. We know there's no perfect solution here, like we keep emphasizing, but least disruptive to the accepting school and the incoming students and families. When we put all of these things together, talk to the staffs, talk to the communities, talk to the families involved, Penn was the solution. We thought the best, least disruptive solution and the best option for those students to find a landing spot to continue their program. And you see the little asterisk there under least disruptive. Penn already has the teachers, structures, and supports in place. The Penn community has already made the choice to have a DLI program. I'm going to come back to that in just a second, but it's important. And of course, Granite School District does not currently see sufficient demand to support another Spanish DLI program in the area. We were asked multiple times, well, if not Penn, let's put it at another school and just begin a new program. Mill Creek was barely sustaining their program. So even if 100% of the students went to another school, there was not the demand, not yet anyway. If we see it one day, then we will address that. But it did not exist at the time of the study to create or move an entire program to another school. Again, is it a challenge? Are there some things that we had to look at very hard, very closely at Penn and to work out, and we'll still have to work out to make this transition? Absolutely, no doubt about it. But I can tell you that Principal Higgins at Penn and Principal Clayton at Mill Creek have already been hard at work, along with both community councils and PTAs, to start that transition and make this work. I noticed in a document a few days ago, and it's what made me come back to this, and I in fact got this from Rick Anthony when he listed this when we were talking about Graduate of Granite goals, because this was taken directly from the Granite School District Strategic Plan. Granite School District believes that to ensure student success, systems must promote and support learner-centered structures. I just coincidentally had those same words that we kept using in why it was important for them, is because Penn already has the teachers, the structures and supports in place to make that work. DLI is a significant program, and it has to be a school-wide, even community choice to make that program work. Penn has made that decision. Therefore, we felt like the students at Mill Creek could move, hit the ground running in an effectively run program there, and it's continued to succeed. We have, Ben, anything to add? I don't know, but we've covered a lot of ground, and I know I'm not covering everything that we've done in the last 30 days.
I think it's important to understand that we had some really extensive and excellent conversations with these communities to look to the future about how we could best support students and work through these transitions to make the impact as minimal as possible. And I feel like we're in a really great spot, probably better so on any other transition for a school closure than we've seen in the past, frankly. We have some amazing administrators in these areas and some wonderful community leaders who want this to be successful and have gotten on board with recognizing the benefits to their specific schools that are taking into these programs, but also it's not all perfect and rosy, right? And knowing that we're going to be there to work and support them through some of the challenges of these transitions. So I feel a lot, not that I didn't feel good before, but I feel even better about this recommendation moving forward.
I'll just add quickly, some people have asked this, and I think it's fantastic news, and that is the survey that Mill Creek and Principal Clayton sent to the current DLI families at Mill Creek. We were trying to find out how many of those families were going to continue the DLI program at Penn. Keeping in mind there are, I think, a maximum of 127 students, DLI students, that could continue on. Principal Clayton has reached out, home visits, phone calls, you name it, and has done everything possible. And the great news is there are approximately 100. We're hopeful of even a little more than 100 of those 127 that have so far committed to continuing at Penn. That's fantastic. We love that. Now, of course, I will say with the asterisk that there's always fluctuation in that. We have 8 or 9 months to see how many people show up in August, but that's a huge number. A little better than we even anticipated, but we're very, very excited to see that number of students that want to continue in the program.
Great information. I can speak for the board in saying that thanks for taking our questions seriously. We did have some questions, very specific questions on the Mill Creek DLI. And thank you for holding those extra meetings and going back to those communities. I do want to recognize Sylvia Catton from Mill Creek City Council just walked in, so want to make sure we recognize her as an elected official representing part of our area. So welcome, Sylvia. Okay, we are about to begin our public hearing. Is there anybody, last call to go out in the hall if you wish to speak at the public hearing? Anybody? Everybody's already signed up. Who wants to speak? Excellent. So we're going to wait for our Chief of Staff, Ben Horsley, to bring me the list, and we'll go ahead and get started. As he gets the list, just a couple reminders of public comment, public hearing. We just encourage civil dialogue, no calling out of specific personnel or employees. And then we'll give you your 5 minutes to speak. And is it 5? 3 minutes. Sorry. Forgetting my job up here. 3 minutes to, share your thoughts regarding. Now, this is specific, the public hearing. This is to hear comments related specifically to this study. All right, we are going to start. We're going to kind of go backwards. Is it Khan? Did I say that wrong? Yes. Is it? How do you say it? Khan? Okay, welcome. We're going to invite you. It looks like you're from Twin Peaks. If you'll come up and state your name and your address just for our records and our minutes, and then we'll give you your 3 minutes to share your thoughts.
Well, thanks a lot, ma'ams and sirs and ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to all of you, and thanks a lot for giving me a time at an 11th hour. So first of all, let me thank the leadership of the district and the team and all the patrons and the parents for keeping that incredible spirit of education alive. It's not an easy task to be into academics and health anytime. And as I was talking to your colleague outside, we have seen the angels in a human form. I would rather say super angels in a human form in the last 2.5 tough years. So thank you very much for that. So like any other parent, I think concerns will be as like most of the parents after this Twin Peaks sad news closure, because I am a parent to the 3 children. And coming back to your question, I reside at 992 East Olympus Park Drive, next to the Walmart. And my youngest goes to the Twin Peaks. My middle child went to the Twin Peaks, who is in Bonneville Junior High, and the eldest go to the Cottonwood High, who would be graduating this year, God willing. So, with little goosebumps when I heard the news, and I barely moved into Utah 3.5 years before. It's very welcoming, encouraging, and motivating, and I have worked in 10 different countries. But I wish to settle down here. My kids love Utah. They love their schools, let alone the district. They don't even want to change the schools, with no disrespect to any other school or district. So I am not sure about the committee recommendations and the final result, but I could see, and of course I met the principal of, I believe, James Elementary, who told that, my kid will be going to the school. The only concern was that because I was on the verge of, getting a home, and because of the district changes, we have limited options. So what will happen to the transportation system? And that being said, are we likely to, or, we don't want to move out of the place as well. But yes, provided if there's no choice, we have to change our residence, provided the school is same. So thank you very much. I think, I accepted, the time limit of 3 minutes. Thank you very much again, and stay safe and healthy and happy and jolly. And God bless you all.
Thank you, Khan. Thank you for those comments. Thank you for coming
Pleasure is
tonight.
mine.
All right, next we're going to have Sherry Anderson, and then after Sherry, we're going to have Michelle Jones.
Hi, my name is Sherry Anderson. I live at 4536 South Julep Drive in Murray, just across the street from the Mill Creek city boundary. I have 3 kids who are all Moss scholars. 2 of them are also now at Bonneville, and 1 is currently still at Moss. I work part-time at Moss. I'm the PTA president and this serve on the school community council. And I just wanted to make a public comment for the record about our experience, my experience, and the experience of the Moss community with this boundary study. We overall had a really positive experience in our Moss community going in. It was a little bit of a gut punch to see Moss there in option A, and we had some pretty big concerns going into our first meeting at the beginning of October. The first of them was that we serve a really underprivileged population, one of the most economically disadvantaged populations in the state, and also one of the most, if not the most, culturally diverse student populations in the state. So we were concerned that this might turn into a popularity contest, and that it would be open to the people who had the privilege of participating, which was not our community at large. And our second concern was that in all 3 options, A, B, and C, we were going to lose a beloved chunk of our student community. And we raised those concerns at our first meeting, and Ben was there, and Julie and Nicole and Clark were there, and we had a really productive conversation that just kind of launched us into some really close partnerships, I felt, that lasted over the next couple of months, and we had some really positive experiences. I felt like we were really heard, our concerns were heard, we were worried about what that transition would look like for the students we would be losing. We were worried about if Moss closed, what that would look like for our families, how they would even grasp the concept, how they would, parents would be able to access a new school. So many of them have lack of personal transportation. We were just worried about the resources and how to make this something that would work for our kids. We love our kids and we want the best for them. And we felt like the PAC committee and the board was with us 100%, that you heard us, and that you just went above and beyond to listen to our concerns. You gave us the time we needed. I felt like we raised those initial concerns and everybody kind of backed off. Some tears were shed and we said, we need a minute, stop it. And you guys let us raise questions and explore what that transition would look like for our kids that we were losing. And you gave us time to talk about talk with Walker Elementary about how that reception would be, talk to transportation. I think the night before the November meeting, Steve and Ben were on the phone with our principal and Walker's principal saying, we're getting a no vote from the board unless I get both of you on board for this. Like I really appreciated that. I appreciated the time that we had to explore this and to really feel like this was going to be a good move for our kids. And so I just wanted to state that. We have well over 30 languages spoken at our school. We've had the help desk add 4 new languages to Discovery just this year that haven't been in the data table pick list. We just have a big, beautiful, vibrant community that brings a lot to the world and a lot to the Valley. And we are grateful for the representation that was given them through the extra meetings and the extra conversations by the board. So I just want to say thank you. We are going to miss our kiddos so much. So for public record, we love them. And we're so excited for the new kids that we get to serve. We love kids. We love what we do. We love helping and building this community. And we'll take anybody you want to give us. So thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle Jones. I'm a math teacher and the proud president of Granite Education Association. Dear Granite School Board of Education members, President Winter, Superintendent Nye, I would like to take the time tonight to publicly express GEA's support of the decision to close Spring Lane, Twin Peaks, and Mill Creek elementary schools. We laud the efforts the district took to educate and collect stakeholder feedback from GEA as well as other stakeholders of these communities. We know this decision is a difficult one to make. Schools are the center of our community networks. Disrupting these important social structures truly is painful, as we just saw. However, this hard decision is the right decision. It's the fiscally responsible decision. It better utilizes district resources. It supports our teachers and students, and it helps create a more vibrant school community and more diverse opportunities for our students. Specifically, this decision supports teachers in providing the highest quality education to their students by potentially reducing the number of splits and providing more opportunities to collaborate with our grade level peers. Thank you for having the courage to make this hard but sound decision. GE also recognizes the benefits of the DLI programs in our schools, where the community has chosen to have a dual immersion program. We support the PAC's recommendation to honor the commitment made to current DLI participants. And we look forward to participating in ongoing efforts to study good systems for our DLI programs. In addition, GEA would like to thank Terry Bodden for his service as a member of the Granite Board of Education. Thank you for being a servant of our schools, of our kids, of our teachers. Thank you for being a balanced advocate for students, employees, and parents. We know it's hard to balance all of those sometimes. As well as a friend to GEA, the Granite Education Association. You'll truly be missed.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, we have now gone through everybody who has signed up for this, so we're going to go ahead and close our public hearing portion of our meeting. And now we're going to open it up for some board discussion, and I can see a lot of questions written up here. So we're going to begin our discussion now. And Nicole, would you like to start?
I know I asked you this before, Steve, but just so that everybody understands, I know Sylvia brought up the suggestion to include that northern boundary and change that. Can you just explain, just so that the community can hear that as well, and those online, why that was chosen not to take that?
You bet. What we're talking about is the area, two fairly small geographic areas just east of Brickyard Plaza that have been, up to this point, part of the Mill Creek boundary. Our recommendation has been and continues to be that they become part of the Rosecrest elementary boundary. We did review that with the PAC, and I do remember Sylvia standing up here, I think it was last board meeting, and asking that that area be able to remain with Mill Creek. The three-pronged approach, or the three reasons that we came to for continuing with the recommendation to go to Rosecrest are simply we feel like the geography lines up better for those students to cross as many streets, and to go to either Wilson or Mill Creek can be a challenge in the short term and long term, the busier that area gets. But probably more importantly, most of that area already chooses to attend Olympus and Skyline. So we have 5 high school students in those 2 small little block areas. 3 of those go to Olympus and 2 go to Skyline. We have 1 elementary student in that area, and that student is in kindergarten. While it's not ideal, if there's a good time to make a change for a student, the earlier the better, and a kindergarten is about as good as you can get when, as far as that goes. But so I think we're fortunate that way. But for those 3 reasons, the PAC says no. I think we want to continue to have those students go to boundary to Rosecrest.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that was addressed and that we know why. I just want to say, and then I'll be done with my comments, I just want to say I recognize that Penn, that elementary, had some concerns, and I appreciate your extra work and efforts that you have gone through. The plan that was come up with to incorporate that, to make sure that was their concerns were addressed, and that there is a plan on how to approach that DLI being put there. So thank you for that. It was clear from the last time that we had public comment that there were some comments made that just, particularly from one of our communities that we suggested closing, that they said, you're not listening to our concerns because the school has a lot of support. And that's the one thing that maybe if we can do better is to make sure that we help our communities understand that we're not closing these schools because they don't have support. We're closing them. We're making this tough decision because, as Michelle spoke, there is a fiscal note to that, but it's also educationally the systems that we have. These are the things that are good for our kids, and that is our primary concern. So just as we go forward, maybe that is something that we need to include. But I just want to thank the admin, the teachers, and the community members for the work that they've put on this. I thank you to anybody who's here from the Penn community. I know this is a big thing for you, and it's something that was not expected. And I appreciate the work that you are willing to put in now to do this. I just, Sherry, thank you so much. I feel like you have embraced this, and you have really helps your community, and I know that those kids that are coming to you guys will be okay, and that you I think people like you make this world better, so thank you. Thank you to everybody who has worked on this, and I appreciate the stuff that you have done.
Connie, do you want to go next?
You answered my one concern as to how many students, DLI students from Mill Creek were going to Penn, so I appreciate that information. I appreciate all of the effort that you've made to listen and to help. I agree with that the principals have been so willing. Even though it's difficult, they love the schools, they love, the area and everything, and how they've worked also with their community to keep them united. Thank everyone that's been involved in this. I appreciate totally how many times you've been out and tried to get the attention of and comments from everyone else. This has truly been easier to make this decision, as difficult as it is, because of your hard work. It makes it so different than what we've done years ago. So thank you for all you've done to help us with this.
Thank you.
Julie?
I just wanted to mention that the reason that that Penn is coming up so much here is not because its changes are bigger than anybody else's, because we have a lot of schools who are going to see a lot of changes with this vote. And it's just that we kind of got those schools' concerns resolved early on. And so this last month has been kind of a push to go and help Penn resolve its concerns. So I didn't want there to be a sense that we were not recognizing the work that's gone on at all of the schools, because there's been a huge effort at all of the schools. And I just want to point out, especially in the other school that's accepting a DLI program, and that's Oakwood. I just wanted to make sure we're going to be studying DLI in our district soon as a board. I think that's an important thing that has come up in this boundary study, and I appreciate that that's kind of come to light. I felt that, in all the work that has gone into this, I felt like it was an appropriate moment for me to write a statement. So I just wanted to make sure and say how I'm thinking and why I'm voting the way that I'm voting. So I'm going to read this. As a voting member of this board, I accept that my vote tonight comes with serious accountability, both to the community and to myself, for years to come. I appreciate the effort to make sure we're asking the right questions and finding the right answers. I appreciate that through this process, I've heard from many patrons and employees and have analyzed a lot of data. I've learned to love the schools in this study and have seen the love that the people in the schools have for each other. This has made it sad for me to choose to support closing schools. However, I've also seen the hard work people have been putting into their schools in order to make up for the lack of resources and the struggle, bigger for some than for others, that schools have to serve their students. All indicators say that overall students will benefit from the support this consideration will bring. I don't mean to say there won't be sacrifices and growing pains. We'll work to lighten those where we can. But I truly believe this consolidation will bring about more opportunities for kids to reach their potential as they benefit from more resources and opportunities. As I take the time to appreciate what Mill Creek, Spring Lane, and Twin Peaks have meant to our communities over the years, I'll also be looking forward to how the students of those schools will bring their talents to their new schools, strengthening them in the process. I'm confident this move will result in greater overall outcomes for all students and agree with the PAC committee's recommendation.
Thank you, Julie. Terry.
Well, I couldn't have said it any better, so thanks for writing that.
You want to read mine again?
I'll just
It's right here.
I'll second. And also what Connie said, the fact that we don't have as many here this time as last time doesn't mean that they don't care. I think what it means is that you, Ben and Steve, have done an excellent job of going out to those communities and listening to them, and we appreciate that also. So I agree with all that's been said.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Clark, Chris?
Most everything that has been said is I agree with. We appreciate the PAC and their diligence to do right by our students. And change is hard, and this affects a lot of students and a lot of boundaries. But at the end of the day, this is the right thing for students, and that's really where our focus needs to be. And I was very pleased to hear that 100 of those students do want to keep with the Mill Creek, from the Mill Creek community in the Penn DLI program, because that was a concern for me also. So I just appreciate all the hard work that went into this, and all the parents and teachers and admin that spent so much time on this consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Clark?
Yeah, maybe I can start with just a quick question, hopefully quick. Obviously, with the change of this magnitude, there's certainly no desire to change again in the very near future, especially for these communities that are impacted. But can you speak a little bit to what you'll do from here forward in terms of a continuous effort to evaluate and reevaluate the changes as they've been implemented, and how evolution that no doubt will come to communities and specific neighborhoods and situations, and how you'll take that into account as we move forward from here?
Clark, if it's okay, Superintendent and I would like to answer that.
Sure. I think immediately, depending on what the vote of the board is, as staff, we work to the success of the decisions of this board. And as such, the assurances that we have released, we'll start there. The assurances that we sent out to those communities, we're going to upkeep and uphold. We'll continue to work with the community, identify what in the transition, what obstacles or challenges may be experienced, and work to solution. So in terms of the effort of engaging the community, as much effort has gone into everything to this point, we still have considerable amount of engagement that will occur after this point as we gear up for what next year looks like, creating as smooth as transition as possible, recognizing that it is a considerable disruption, but we'll work to the success of our students, our faculty and staff administrators, our employees, and the parents of these communities that are impacted.
Thanks. And then can you speak, I appreciate that in terms of the transition, can you also speak to your role in terms of planning and boundaries, Steve, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, in these same communities that are changing boundaries currently?
You bet. I think one of the most important things to recognize is we are, thankfully to the board recognizes the importance of, not me, but this position. Not all districts have a planning and boundaries position that we can constantly monitor the changes and the fluid nature of things in a district the size of ours. One of the things I have to do constantly is communicate with planning departments of all the municipalities to look at residential growth. I'll be looking more and more and working with the state charter school organization to try to monitor that, and even pushing for changes that we've already done. But it's just a constant process. So even next year, when I come back, I think next month, I'm already working on what we're doing going forward. When I come back in January or February to talk about that, I'll have a lot of focus on the new area, but I have to keep at least one eye behind me on what we've already done and what we have to do in the future and when we're going to do that. I think I'll be able to answer this more completely in that meeting when we come back. But it's, I guess in a nutshell, we can't just make a decision and move forward and never turn around or never stop to look at the ripple effect that we've talked about quite a bit and how it's going. Is it going as we anticipated, as we had hoped, as we projected? We feel pretty good about that, but things always come up, whether it's COVID or the economy or the real estate market or you name it, a bunch of issues that we all have to constantly watch and monitor to make sure we are making the best decisions. And the board has the most information to make the best decisions for the students and the student outcomes.
I would just simply add, obviously we try to look as long-term as we possibly can when making recommendations to the board so that we don't have to make any changes beyond what we've already done. But as we all know, this is a process of continual improvement of not just our educational systems and our programs and the education we provide, but also of our boundaries and the structures and supports that we provide. So do I expect that there will be adjustments a few years from now to this neighborhood or that, shifting over to help offset some shifts or challenges that we've seen? Yeah, and that's just unfortunately the way some of these things go. Do I expect any of those things in the short term? No, because I feel like we've done an excellent job of analyzing what the challenges are there that do exist, and we have heard from these communities and spent the appropriate amount of time working to address those things.
Thank you. I do appreciate you mentioning the ripple effect, as that continues to be a significant concern of mine and always has been from where we started here many months ago. My last comment is simply, I think many would know that Spring Lane is my community center. That's the school that my 5 children all attended. It's around the corner from my home. And this has been an agonizing decision, not just with respect to Spring Lane, but for all 3 of the schools that are at issue here. And I do feel a great responsibility from a fiscal standpoint, but most of all from an academic opportunity standpoint. And so I appreciate the effort that's gone into the recommendation, and the weight and the magnitude of the decision is not lost on me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clark and other board members. There has been a lot of work on this, and there's been a lot of, Steve, Ben, your whole entire team, Gaina's out there. She was at those meetings as well. You have a wonderful staff behind you that's working just as hard as you guys are to make sure that these meetings go well, that the minutes and records are kept, because board members have had the opportunity to review literally hundreds of comments, emails, we've had phone calls. And so I wanted to recognize the parents, our community members who have taken the opportunity to provide feedback and share their perspectives. I also wrote out a few notes, just like Julie did, as to why I'm voting for the closure of these 3 schools this evening. First and foremost, I sincerely believe that it is in the best interest of kids, giving them the opportunity to have the best education they can, to have schools where there's multiple teachers in each grade, that the teachers can collaborate. The better the teachers can work with each other, the better education it is for the students. Providing flexibility for those families, that it isn't just one teacher per grade, or they're not dealing with splits that offer a new set of challenges, that truly is going to give them the best educational opportunity. Sometimes it may seem like board members are just, we're up here, we're robots, we don't have feelings, we're making these hard choices. And I want to assure you that this is an emotional decision for the board. We are human beings with human emotions, and this is tough. We understand our vote tonight is going to hurt. It's going to hurt many of you and some of those listening in, and it also hurts us. This is not something we enjoy, so be rest assured we hurt right along with you. As I mentioned before, we have studied this for 10 months, spent dozens of hours in meetings, reviewing comments, answering phone calls, texts, emails. We really have tried to listen to multiple opinions, perspectives on all sides of this issue. Sometimes it may seem like we haven't listened or heard people. With tough votes like school consolidations and school closures like we are voting on this evening, we know there will be a group that's really happy because they agree with us. And conversely, we know that there's going to be a group of people who maybe are not as happy with us because we're not voting how they would like us to. But I want people to be rest assured, we have listened to all groups and all sides. You have been heard. It's just a really tough vote that we've got to make this evening. Last, we have great communities. You know, studying these communities, I don't live in these 3 communities, but it's been fascinating to get to know these communities better. Mill Creek has shown through and through that they've embodied the word community. They brought in people, you know, Spring Lane, he speaks of the great thing. Twin Peaks, all of them, they're good communities. We have awesome communities, east to west, in our schools. So my big hope, and I said this last month, is that we don't fight the wave, that we ride the wave. That we can work together as these new school communities are being formed, boundary alignments are happening, some students are losing their schools and moving to other schools. My big hope, my sincere hope, is that great effort has gone on to rebuilding these new communities, that we can have that same feel, that we can watch out for each other, that we can enjoy the diversity that you will be in each of these schools, and that we can bring all families, all students, all staff, everybody together for the betterment of the education of our kids. And so that is my sincere hope. So those are just a few thoughts I wanted to share with you before we get down to the voting of this action item. So with that, board, we have arrived at the time to put this to action. So do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the recommendation of the committee for the closure of Spring Lane, Twin Peaks, and Mill Creek Elementary Schools.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve as a final action made by the Population Analysis Committee the recommendation to close Twin Peaks, Spring Lane, and Mill Creek Elementary. And we have that seconded on the table. Any further questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you again, everybody. I know this is a tough thing. We appreciate all the feedback that we've received, and we look forward to making this a positive thing moving forward. Thanks, Ben and Steve. All right. Next on our agenda, we're going to move into our action item, a Title I funding discussion led by Rick Anthony, Assistant Superintendent. We'll turn the time over to Rick.
Board President, Board Superintendent, staff, thank you. Earlier this month, we had a study session taking a look again at Title I funding, how we go about doing those things. I have a few slides of their review. A few slides of review from that meeting in November, and perhaps a couple more from prior meetings that we've had. This has been an ongoing discussion for years, and excited to see where we're at. Just a reminder, our current Title I schools include 3 junior highs and 2 high schools and several elementary schools. This was a graph Aaron had shown earlier this month that he was speaking to how we go about selecting who's served. It's always a poverty consideration. Wanted to highlight on this, Silver Hills Elementary has fallen out of that and is lower. So some of the numbers that we share consider Silver Hills no longer being funded in Title I, and I'll point that out. A reminder that in 2021-2022, Granite School District's Title I allocation was $15.5 million. That went down in 22-23, this current school year. We supplemented that so schools weren't impacted with ESSER funds. That means going into next year, if we believe we'll receive a similar funding, there's a concern over loss of funding, not being able to backfill that with ESSER.
When will we find that number out?
We truly don't find it out historically until July. So we always conservatively our message to schools is we're going to be saying this 14.2 number to schools as they plan staffing, et cetera. But we find out late, which makes it challenging. And we're open with schools on that, and so they're conservative in how they use Title I with staffing in the spring, recognizing it could be less. We gave you three options, talked through three options in the study session. The first one was continuing to fund high schools at their current PPA or similar. If you consider that we wouldn't add any new Title I schools, but that we'd receive the same funding that we did this year, and that Silver Hills is no longer designated, that would mean the remaining 26 schools would receive roughly 20% less, because we backfilled that this year out of ESSER. Option 2 was we could take a look at lowering the PPA at high schools. This has become a new option federal government has allowed for. Aaron took a real extreme lowering in his calculation, going from a $260 PPA to a $10 PPA in his math. Even in doing so that way, it results in a 14% reduction to all schools next year. And you might say, well, gosh, that's not a lot different than 20%, and that's a big deduction in PPA. That's because, again, the PPA that's assigned is stratified based on the level of poverty. So, for example, if two elementary schools, the same size of students, one might receive, same number of students, one might receive more Title I money than the other because their PPA, their per pupil allocation is higher because their free and reduced lunch is higher. So the PPA isn't necessarily the same, it's stratified based on poverty. Third option is again, no longer funding high schools, which also calculating in, we don't add any new Title I schools. All this, we bank on every school, we bank on the school district receiving the same amount of funding and Silver Hills no longer being designated. This would be the least impact on the remaining schools, but still a 3% reduction. This graph here just really sums up those three options that we discussed. Questions to this point? This wasn't in your packet, but I did include just some reminders on previous discussions that we've had. There's always that best investment discussion, whether is the better investment in the younger student or later, and there's two really good arguments either way. The K-8 only argument is the earlier you provide intervention, the more time you have resources to come to fruition. The high school also argument is poverty simply doesn't go away. Once students reach high school, it continues, and there is need for high schools to have resources that mitigate poverty as well. Neither of those are wrong, but they're both arguments that can be made. You'd asked us in last year, January of, I grabbed this from January 2021 presentation. You'd asked us to take a look at nationally, how's this decision made? Nationally, it's rarely are high schools funded. They are, but rarely. Nationally, 57% of students that live in poverty are in elementary schools. That's similar in Granite as well. Nationally, elementary students receive 76% of available Title I. In Granite, under our current model, that's elementaries receive 66%. And then finally, the question around student achievement. Does the funding result in improved student achievement? And you'll remember we had taken a look historically in Granite over schools that we'd added funding to or had dropped out and funding, or dropped out of our calculations and funding was reduced. And there wasn't a correlation on the funding, which then had us look at some other variables. And the variables that we shared that impact, the money does make a difference, but also what makes a difference is the people at the school. The school's human capital, the extent to which they have a purposeful plan that aligns resources, and to the extent that those people are committed to that plan and execute on that plan. Wanted to highlight too that principals do assert that Title I funding, just those resources do help with teacher retention as well. And you can see that in a lowered class size. You can see that in some flexibility with funding. So again, just wanted to include a couple of those slides to refresh your memory on previous discussions.
I think it also is fair to say high schools do have a lot more funding resources than elementaries for sure, and even junior highs.
Yeah, they benefit from economy of scale. A lot of our funding, whether it's TSSA, land trust, et cetera, come in a PPA, and that economy of scale, because you have more students, gives you more flexibility.
Questions or comments?
I just have a question. If we don't have the funding numbers until July, how does that work with staffing for these schools?
It's not great. They are conservative. So if I'm a Title I elementary principal and we say, hey, we think we're going to get the same amount as last year, I don't put it all towards staffing. I hold back some. And the downside of that is when that comes to fruition, I might be making some late hires or trying to find some late hires. But it's a better safe than sorry strategy that we use.
Okay. Thank you.
I apologize for not internalizing this better already, but can you help me understand the newfound is probably not the right word, but 2 years ago there was less flexibility, or at least perceived flexibility. Now we have greater flexibility in terms of the per pupil allocation, particularly as it relates to the high school students. Can you help me understand that a little bit better, of what that flexibility is and how there may be flexibility to allocate more money to the elementary schools while still allocating some money to the high schools?
Correct. Yes. And I don't have the in-depth answer. Aaron probably would be better at that, Clark. But in my discussions with him, and his review is simply the feds changed the rule set that allowed us enormous flexibility in that PPA at the high school level. So when he modeled out, well, I won't go all the way back, but when he modeled out a 260 to 10, that is now allowable in any range in between.
Is 10 the lowest?
No.
Can we go to $1?
Yes, you could. When this very first came up, you'll remember Granger's been a Title I high school for a long time, and then with the changes in lunch and how we decided high schools qualify, that meant, because of following that rule set, that Cottonwood was going to come on, and that's what started this conversation, was adding an additional high school.
So this is interesting discussion, and just for everyone listening to understand, this technically does not actually require an action vote by the board. Title I money is already in our possession, and so it can be administrative in nature, although the board has the opportunity to vote on it if we feel it deserves an action vote. So that is, we don't have to vote on this tonight. It can just say, we can just tell the administration, what we can ask them their recommendation and just go forward, or we can take action on it. Julie, did you have a comment?
Thanks. I just forgot that I had a question.
I'm glad you remembered.
Me too. Rick, can you remind me, we talked about it last month, but can you remind me what we have in place for students who come after the elementary time when they can't receive this Title I funding? And I'm thinking especially of people who come from out of the country or out of the district.
Yeah, and this we know is a situation that Cottonwood High has as well, is where we have refugee students, et cetera, who are coming in as a 10th grader, 11th grader. The services that we allow there are through other, well, Title I certainly could help serve, but we also use Title III and some other federal monies as well to try and help get those students caught up. It's a challenge. I don't think that the loss of Title I money at Cottonwood would mean there is no solution for those students. There are other options, whether it's state money with TSSA, land trust, et cetera, Title III money, grants, et cetera.
One more follow-up question for me. In terms of the per pupil allocation, does that have to remain consistent from school to school?
Yeah, so if I
Or at
think
least
what you're asking is correct, if we were to say it's $10 at Granger, it would have to be $10 at Conway. It would have to be at that level, that would have to be the same, yes.
But it doesn't have to, it can vary between levels of school, so primary or elementary versus secondary can be different, that allocation.
The elementary is going to be stratified based on level of poverty. That's going to dictate, we will have some flexibility there, but we will have some constraints there as well.
Thanks.
The 912 is the much more flexible in how we decide.
So, Karen, you indicated we don't have to vote. We can just have the board or the administration make a recommendation. What is the administration's recommendation?
Please.
Just to make sure, yeah, as has been articulated, it can be an administrative action. As we've studied this out and weighing the pros and cons, we feel like given the budget reduction and the impact has been stated, intervening at the earlier level and being able to provide some additional resources, other funding sources for the high schools as it pertains to not supplementing or supplanting by any means those federal dollars, but just drawing on through needs analysis what impact that would have on Cottonwood and Granger and being able to work to that end. But it is the recommendation as a course of action to take the Title I dollars that have been previously allocated to Granger and Cottonwood and redistribute it to the elementaries and junior highs within the networks associated. So.
I really agree with that recommendation. We don't have to take a vote. I do think that elementary schools can use it. My dream is always that we can expand that as time goes on. But I see the good that can come from the elementary schools as we work with them. And so we're not affecting the junior highs, though, are we? This
Correct.
is just the high school. Yeah.
Correct.
And I can see where junior high, you'd love to have all of them at, that, but some kids take that much time to get that gleam in their eye and start reading. So I prefer that.
I do put a lot of value in your recommendation, Rich, but I also highly value flexibility. And within the revised allocation possibilities, I'm not personally quite ready to let go of that, I suppose. My other concern and why I'm perhaps anxious about letting go of that flexibility is it still bothers me that there isn't really any data to suggest that there's correlation here even, let alone causation.
In fact, the data shows that there isn't.
Right. So I respect the anecdotal inferences that the elementaries may be best served to have the money, but I still don't see it bear out. And as you said, the data just doesn't show it.
No, I'm just gonna, my 2 cents were, I'm gonna say that there is data. There is solid data that says that, I gave you the example. It takes 15 minutes of daily intervention for a kindergartner to catch up. By the time they're in 6th grade, it takes an hour and a half of daily intervention, one-on-one time. And that just increases as you go. So if we're going to be able to do interventions, it is better, per that data, to do it earlier. the data that we had, if that's what you're referring to, as I was thinking about that data after we had gone over it, you'll notice that what data was presented was graduation rates of high schools versus, I believe, testing scores of the elementary, which is not, to me, comparing apples to oranges. That's what that was. You can't, I mean, if you were to say, this is how many kids graduate from elementary school, that data would have been off the charts, right? So I feel like that data was a little unfair. Also, it didn't take into consideration if there were any boundary changes with any of those elementaries, if there was a, K through 5 change from K through 6. It didn't reflect a change in administration. It didn't reflect a lot of different things. And I truly believe that's why that data that we were presented didn't reflect it didn't give us much feedback as far as what was really effective. I think as I talked to some of my Title I schools, South Kearns Elementary, she said her data as far as the testing scores for her kindergartners that were in full-day kindergarten were off the charts above the half-day kindergarten, and that was funded by Title I. And that, to me, is some of the data that we needed to see, and perhaps in the future, some of the data that we do need to see. So,
Point of clarification, the study that we looked at was the resources alone. So resources alone, when we looked at that, we weren't able to tie a tight correlation. And I think in what we were trying to convey there, and I tried to convey shortly, was there's a lot of variables, and the variables I named were human capital, having a plan, collective commitment to that plan. Nicole highlights some other variables: turnover, leadership, boundaries, etc. That when pressed to show the difference, the complexity of the variables in that makes it very, very challenging. The other piece Nicole points out is on a national scale, outside of just Granite data, on a national scale, the early literacy, the early numeracy studies showing return on investment, and we even look at full-time kindergarten, which a lot of elementaries would put that money to full-time kindergarten, and national data showing how valuable that can be.
Rick, I really appreciate Clark's point, though. I would like to see that we know what data we're looking at to determine if this was a good decision, both in terms of what, and this actually came from a patron, both in terms of what indicators we're looking at for elementary, as well as what indicators we're looking at to see how this is going to impact the high schoolers who are not going to receive funding. And I'd really like to see in the end how that played out. And I know that may be 1 or 2 or 3 years down that we'll really be able to see the impact of it. But even still, I think it's really important that we're checking in on it and seeing, and especially looking at through the lens of data and what indicators we determine now are the things we're going to measure.
I would just say to that, yes. And in the graduate of Granite, we have many of those metrics, right, that rise to the top of prioritization. But I would note in this scenario, and we could go back and look at the numbers, but even removing, because we've been using ESSER funds for the reduction of the Title I funding allocation that we received, even removing it from the high schools, the elementary schools and junior high schools will still see a 3% reduction in their Title I budget. So they're not gaining additional funding for which to implement even more intervention. But it's really holding them essentially almost harmless in light of the reduction of those funds.
And that's also considering Silver Hills being removed. And if we stay the same, we went down because Utah's economy compared to nationally was doing better. I'm not staying up on it enough to know if that's still holding true. But to your point, Superintendent, that we will, if we stay the same, Silver Hill's no longer funded, it's a 3% reduction.
which is easier from a statistical comparison analysis. If we had the opportunity to infuse, based on this course of action, 10% additional funds, identify a certain specific strategy or intervention, then we can measure that impact. As it is right now, we won't, even in closing the 2 high schools in Silver Hills, schools will still see, those that are remaining that get Title I funds will still see a 3% reduction. So it's a little, we're back where I started, we're still looking at effort and alignment of prioritization in that effort around specific metrics that we will have a better sense in our district how we're progressing along those lines. It's a little bit more nuanced in the fact that we're not actually increasing intervention or increasing strategies or increasing resources and support in this scenario. It actually still is a reduction.
Real quick, let me just clarify. You slipped and said close 2 high schools, and we're not closing high schools.
We're not closing Title I funding to those high schools.
Okay, we're just talking Title I funds here. So let me clarify that.
Thank you.
Look at Steve Hogan. He was sweating over there. Holy cow. I hope that we'll still make sure to look at the metrics in the high schools.
I think it's important to realize that when we made the choice and decision to move Title I funding from elementaries to also, and junior highs to also include high schools, the board made that decision and gave direction to the superintendency. I think we should be consistent in having the board make that recommendation. And as I understand it, we need to be making decisions soon so that these schools can make plans.
That staffing piece becomes critical.
I just think it's important the board understands, because not all of you are here. As a board, we gave that direction to the administration.
Rich?
I'll make a motion.
And I would say in terms of maintaining some flexibility, as we receive different funding allocations from the Department of Education, federal government, we can make those adjustments and do so budgetarily in the event that maybe it's not as what it appears currently. However, it's certainly not, or has not been trending in that way for some time.
All right, Terry, go ahead.
Well, I move that we accept the recommendation of the administration and that we remove Title I funding from the high schools, and that the superintendency and administration act accordingly with the elementaries and junior highs.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on the table to reallocate the funds to, I don't even know how to say this motion, to reallocate the funds from the 2 high schools back to the elementaries. Yeah, there you go. I don't remember what you said, Terry. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further concerns? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion passes 6-1 with Mr. Nelson being the nay vote. All right, thanks, Rick, for that. All right, we have we have several first readings. We're going to invite our calendaring committee to come on up. Thank you for hanging with us.
I would like to actually, as they're coming up, make a clarification, and I apologize, I did not review the board packet closely. This is technically not a first reading, although as an action item, we are not approving a calendar tonight. We are simply reviewing the calendar and Julie, thank you for bringing this question to my attention. We're simply reviewing the calendar options, making any adjustments, demonstrating what the calendaring committee's proposals are, and those will go out to the community in January for formal feedback per our calendaring process. So I apologize. We should have clarified on that process a little bit better in the board packet.
So technically, this is information. This is an info item, so we won't be taking action on this. This is an opportunity for the calendaring committee to come and present their best thinking to the board. Board, it is our job to review these, and hopefully you've already done so, but to make any tweaks to these two proposed calendars prior to them going out to survey for feedback. And I really would like to encourage board members, if you do have concerns or would like to switch days around, now would be the most appropriate time to do so, because when we do it afterwards, which we're allowed to do, when we do it after, it sometimes raises a little bit more eyebrows. And so hopefully you've spent some time to review. With that, Shauna, are you taking over? Craig, who's leading this?
I am.
All right.
Thanks, President Winder and Granite Board and Dr. Nye and our assistant superintendents. We appreciate the opportunity we have to be here tonight. And we've had a great committee work together, and I think we have some pretty good thinking we're bringing tonight. We'll see what you think about that. Just a few things about our survey. It went out for the first time on September 17th via Blackboard to all patrons, employees, and students. It was also resent on October 3rd, and it was part of the bulletin that's on the main webpage, so it's been accessible for almost, I think, for most of October. The committee was made up of 4 parents, our Region 5 PTA director, 3 school-level administrators, a counselor representative, 2 secretaries, the transportation director, a GTI representative, and 3 members of the GEA board, including and also the 3 of us. Just a reminder about some of the parameters that are set. This is at the beginning of the survey, and one of the questions is, did you read these parameters? Believe it or not, a few people did mark no, that they didn't, but they are there for a reminder because there are guidelines, as you know, that we need to follow. We cannot, of course, have less than the 180 days or the 179 with the legislative day. We can't change holidays. Basically, in a nutshell, it's very difficult to start after Labor Day and end before Memorial Day, which is what everybody likes, but it is impossible to do with these parameters. Any questions about the parameters? Here's some of the data from the survey. This is the response rate by their connection. As you can see, we have the students. There were 156 responses. We had about 2,700 parent responses, around 1,100 employee responses, and 430-ish that were parent and guardian responses. Total of 4,473. Responses by network, you can see each network. We gathered that data so that if you look, for example, at Taylorsville coming in with the most responses, the ones that say, there you go, Nicole. And then also the not applicable, several people, maybe some of our elementary principals weren't sure what that question meant and which high school they were part of, and some of our employees also said the same thing. The main question was basically, do you prefer longer breaks during the year and a shorter summer, or do you prefer shorter breaks during the year and a longer summer? And you can see it was pretty close. 46% wanted longer breaks during the year and a shorter summer, and about 53% preferred shorter breaks during the year and a longer summer. This shows how different groups responded. Parents, 43 for the longer breaks, 57 for the longer summer. Employees, 55, shorter summer, longer summer, 45. Students, 46 and 54. The parent and employee group, 48 and 52. Total, which was shown on the previous slide, 47% and 53%. This also shows it by network. So some even, some pretty close, others, as you can see, a bit of a more variance. Questions on that data? All right, and then we get to our weighted average by preference. This is the one where they were to choose, they had to rank it in order of their first preference up to their sixth preference. The first piece of data is starting later in August, and that's 3.55 weighted average. The second one is end by Memorial Day, 3.53. The longer winter break came in as the winner of what people are most interested in, and that was a 4.18 weighted average. A longer spring break, 3.57, so you can see several of these are quite close. Same with the 3-day Thanksgiving, and the fall recess was, out of these 6 choices, the least important. Although we might remember that one year where it was very important.
It was really important the year we didn't give anybody one.
Exactly. So kind of interesting how this data came out, right? All right, now Craig's going to talk to us about the 2 drafts that our committee's come up with.
It's very interesting how you look at the survey results, and the biggest result is that we want shorter breaks, longer summer, yet we when you look at the data, of course, they want a long 2-week winter break, and those things that are the shortest breaks are the least important. So sometimes data does that, but we will do the very best we can, and I get to share with you the 2 calendars that we came up with, which is exciting. Now, these are too small, probably even for our patrons back home to see. You have the individual calendar, so I'm going to bounce around just a little bit. Our next slide does compare these 2 calendars, and I'm going to come back to that so that you can look at them side to side after I describe each individual calendar. So the first draft is going to be draft D, and we left the draft numbers on there because the committee spent a lot of time going through several different drafts, and the final 2 that they came up with that they felt were most important was draft D and E, and so we can make that adjustment when we do the next survey review of patrons to draft A and B, but we just wanted to let you know that we did spend a lot of time and thought going through the calendar itself. Draft D, you can see that it begins teachers return on the 13th of August. School actually begins on a Tuesday, so the 20th of August. Parent-teacher conferences are in September on the 23rd to the 26th. The term ends in October on the 18th. The TCD day falls on a Monday, which is a little bit different. That's a half-day grading, half-day professional development. The term begins then, second term begins on the 22nd of October. We want to notice that fall recess kind of coincides with Halloween, which was something that teachers and parents were very interested in having. Thanksgiving is a 3-day Thanksgiving break, and that's in both calendars. There is a full 2-week winter recess. Second term ends on the 16th of January, followed by a TCD day that also couples with our Human Rights Day. In February, we have a TCD on the 14th that lines up with President's Day. In March, the 3rd term ends on the 27th. That gives us a half-day planning grade day on the 28th, and then spring break for the first week of April. 4th term begins on the 7th of April, and there is a all-day planning PD day on the 28th, leading into our end-of-year testing, AP tests, concurrent tests, IB tests, and it does end on the 6th of June. So that is our calendar D. Is there any questions or things that you'd like to comment on that, or would you rather me go through E first? Go through E first. Okay, looking at draft E, so this is a little bit of a change. We're going to start earlier in August so that it will allow us to end sooner in May, if that makes any sense. Teachers return on the 5th. School actually begins on the 12th.
Sorry, thank you.
School begins on the 12th of August. Parent-teacher conferences then would start a week earlier, and on September 16th through the 19th. The term ends on the 9th, and that actually follows with a 2-day spring break, and then the grading planning day on the 14th of Monday. So second term begins on a Tuesday, the 15th of October. We do have a TCD day still planned that is helpful for that Halloween break. Thanksgiving is a 3-day week, starting on the 27th. Christmas break, which was most important, and the weighted average is also at a full 2 weeks, along with returning on the planning day. Now, one of the things that we want to point out with this calendar is you notice that second term ended prior to the winter break, and third term ends right after the 6th, that planning and teacher work day and grading day. In February, the 14th parent-teacher conferences happens to go through the 10th to the 14th, and so that day off does happen to coincide with Valentine's Day and Washington, or the President's Day, and then the TCD Day follows. So that kind of a 5-day weekend there. The term ends March 13th with a TCD Day, T/TCD Day. The term begins on the 17th of March. It does go for 3 full weeks before we have spring break in April. We have a TCD day on the last day, possible in May, prior to AP testing. So the 2nd of May, AP testing will begin on the 5th, along with some of the other testing that takes place throughout May, and the school year would end on the 29th. So those are our 2 options. I would like to go back and just kind of give you a quick summary of the 2 drafts next to each other. So it does show again when teachers return and how they are earlier in draft E. School begins, the same thing, earlier in draft E. And then as you go through and look at the days, down below spring break, term 1 has 43 days in draft A, term 1 has 42 days in draft E. On draft D, the second term has 47 days. Draft E, 45 days. So again, pretty close. Term 3, 46 days in draft D and 45 days in draft E. And then 4th term, 43 days in draft A and 47 days in draft E. And that all has to do mainly with ending second semester before the winter break. Those are our 2 calendars that we prepared for you as far as the committee. We look forward to your suggestions.
Isn't there some way we don't go till June 6th? This one doesn't go to June 6th. Yeah. It doesn't, but also I don't like the June 6th so well, but there was something on the E that, it's the days of the terms. So first semester is 5 days less than second semester, and that concerns me on E.
I'm going to address the first question, then I'll let these 2 take the second one if you don't mind. When we're trying to develop calendar options, we're obviously trying to have 2 options that are kind of different from each other, right? Obviously, the big winter break was a universal component because of its popularity on the general preference survey. But as you can see from the earlier Memorial Day, which is not always the case, it was difficult to end before Memorial Day. In fact, pretty much impossible on this particular calendaring option. So trying to differentiate the 2 calendaring options, that's kind of why we have one that starts a little bit earlier, a lot earlier, frankly, and ends a little bit later. We did see some comments that there was not a concern about going later into June, especially with that late Memorial Day. And as you remember, in some instances, we've had state championships going in past Memorial Day. That is expected for this particular calendar year. And so having conflicts with graduations was certainly a topic of conversation within the committee itself. And so again, that's why there's a little bit disparity there, trying to give options on the 2 calendars. So when it does go out for general feedback, there is a distinguishable choice.
So I have a question. This is just kind of a general question. Do we ever get to a point where there's just a start date and end date that everyone, like, we kind of get used to as a district and we don't have options every single year? Like, we always start the third week of August and we end by right after Memorial Day. Do we ever look at that? Or is that just, no, we have to have options every year? Just wondering.
We've done both in the past, and I'll let these guys address that as well. The challenge is when those calendars, again, look too much alike, or when there's not enough differentiation, then we're going to see that in the polling results. And remember, this is not a vote when we send it out. We're just asking for feedback on the two calendars. And so we're asking them to give their preference over one or the other, but we're also asking feedback. And rarely have we brought back a calendar from that feedback and simply adopted it without making additional changes based on the comments and feedback that we do get in that survey in January.
Yeah, the best calendar options we put out are those that are vastly different. And then, once again, it's important what Ben just said to acknowledge that this isn't a vote. We do have the ability to bring back, let's say one calendar is really popular over another, but there's several comments, hey, we love this calendar, but could you tweak this? We do reserve the right to make those tweaks. It is not just a hard set in stone calendar A, calendar B, and that's it. And so that's why we try to get feedback, but at the same time allow the flexibility for us. And so we have tasked this calendar committee to come up with two very different calendars for that reason, to set apart what people are going to weigh these two and what do you like better. You probably don't love everything about either option, right? There's things you like, there's things you don't. In respect to your question, Connie, I turned to Nicole with the 5-day difference. I turned to Nicole and hey, they did a great job balancing out the semester numbers, because in years past, it's been like a 9 to 10 day difference. And so I have to say, even Nicole was happy with, well, I don't know if she loves the 5-day difference, but we can see your effort in trying to balance those semesters. So thanks for taking that previous concern into account. And you can speak more to that, but those are just my observations.
Do you want to hit on the first term having a shorter amount of days? I know we had a discussion on that within the committee.
One of the other things that was talked about having the shorter amount of days during that first term is in the end, after testing, a lot of days are built in to be able to support other activities that take place throughout that end of the year. And so we felt like that 5 days, we got as close as we could, but it's okay if they're a little bit imbalanced as long as it's that second semester that has more.
Well, and quite honestly, I'm just going to be honest about this. Those 3 days after Memorial Day, just cross them off. So that just puts a 2-day difference. Sorry.
Yeah, also on the first comment, Connie, about the going so later into June, many of the comments, in fact, the most comments we got were in regards to starting later in August. I don't know if it was because it was so hot last August, as you'll remember, the heat was terrible, and a lot of comments about how the weather is not as bad in June. So that's why we did one calendar to start a little bit later.
Julie?
Yeah, first I just wanted to say I really appreciate that you left this draft D and E, because I love the thought that there was spaghetti thrown all over the place and that this is where we've landed. So thank you for keeping that. That makes me understand where we're at in the process a lot better. Chris, so are you maybe suggesting that we just make it a process that we start the third week of this and we end the first week of that, and what happens in between we kind of muddle around, but we create, I'm interested in the idea that parents always know we start the third Tuesday of the month.
Or something like that, kind of like that.
And maybe there aren't even options to send out to parents?
Well, I think they should be like, here's our calendar ideas, but like I like draft E as I'm looking at it, but then I went back and looked at the 2023-24 calendar, and it ends in June. So that would be a really short summer because of the calendar for the year before that's already been adopted. Does that make sense? Even though I like calendar E, the school year before is ending June 5th or something like that. And so I'm like, well, then that shortens our summer, not because of this calendar, but because of the year before calendar. So I'm saying if we have these vastly different options, sometimes if we're not looking at the calendar before, we're kind of not making a lot of help for our parents to have that longer summer break or whatever we're looking as a district to provide for our
And that's something we're
continuing.
gonna, that's something we're gonna have to wrestle with the board. Right now, the current practice of the board is to task the calendar committee with getting the feedback, and these two, to reiterate, these two calendar options. We're not here tonight to go over which one we as board members like the best. We're here to just say, hey, before we send these out, are there any glaring things that you find wrong with these calendars? Or can we send them out, get the feedback, and go forward with our process? Now, if the board has appetite to change our process, then that's a different conversation. Yeah. Let me tell you, I've been around long enough that the day Christmas falls on has a huge impact on the school calendar. Sure. And so to lock yourselves into the third Tuesday or end by the fourth Monday of May or first Monday in June, whatever, that's really hard because that calendar rotates. And so me personally, I don't have an appetite to lock in. Plus, I think community feedback, school employee feedback, parent feedback, that's what I'm in it. That's what I love about our current process is we can take that feedback and even break it down by network, by school employee, by parents and students and all that, and then that helps us for come to some kind of a consensus. So if we did want to change that practice and lock in more guardrails and more hard set in stone things, I think that's a little bit harder for our calendar committee to work within those parameters.
Sure. Thank you
personally.
for that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
And holidays too, kind of. Some holidays like Halloween, sometimes it's great and it falls on the Friday, you know? But if it's on a Wednesday, those are factors that are all considered.
Yeah,
It could.
I would just point out, to echo that sentiment, over the time that we've done the general preference survey in the fall, those preferences have changed. It started with the weighted average used to be we want to be out by Memorial Day. We had a few years where we got out by Memorial Day, and then suddenly that shifted. We had a 2-week winter break one time, and suddenly that is like the bee's knees in our survey. So opinions change on these over time. Neither of these calendars are perfect. I have no less than 4 different principals who are texting me right now in a panic, and I'm reminding them these will change based on the feedback we see. One of those comments is about kinder testing being in late July because one of these start times. So again, there's no perfect options here, and we will flesh that out. But if we don't give out some options initially, and there was a ton of spaghetti sauce all over the walls in that meeting, right? If we don't throw out some options and then initiate that feedback, we'll get 10,000 plus comments on that survey. And the better the differentiation and the options, the more good feedback that we'll get before putting together a final version.
Karen, I think I support these 2 drafts. I think they both look good.
Can I?
Oh, Nicole has an issue.
It is.
No, I'm just asking, as you approach, I kind of tried to go through it, and I did get some feedback from students this year that said that they feel like the AB days are much more balanced this year, and they're not quite as, and some teachers said that as well. I don't know if that's widespread, Michelle, but I think the feedback that I've heard is that it is, but I would ask that as we get to the final one, can you please include those AB days and how they balance out with each of these or whichever one we land on? Just because that's a really big deal, especially when we have like an A day and an A day and an A day or a B day. Yeah. I guess it happens more BB and then B. And as I looked through it, like I say, I kind of tried to go AB, you know, and figure that out. And it doesn't seem like, I guess the E is the one that I looked at most, and it seems like that's really well balanced. But I just out of curiosity for me, and just to make sure that we have that balanced, I want to make sure that we're not having some of those issues that we've had before. I will say it surprises me to hear that parents want shorter breaks and longer summers, because it's a frustration, and this is to any parent that's listening, when we take kids out of school during the school year, instead of taking them on breaks when we have breaks. So if we're going to vote for that, I totally support that, but then can we please keep our kids in school so that we can have them there when we need them? just a consideration to think about when you are voting for these, that, without having long breaks, that is the consequence. And sometimes it's really frustrating for teachers to have to catch kids up because you don't have a break or you don't take them on a break. In regards to what Chris was saying, and there is a bill, from what I understand at the legislature, that Halloween would be recognized on the last Friday of the month, which would change the date of Halloween. So I'm just saying that, that's another holiday, quote unquote, that would, when it's celebrated. So that would, I would like to, as we gather the data, just because I like this, Craig knows, but can you make sure you include just the feedback for us as far as why? Why do you want an earlier summer and a later, whatever it is? I just would, because I'm hoping that we make decisions that, yes, are good for families, but also are based on what is best academically for our kids, not just what's convenient for parents. And I don't mean to say that rudely, but I do respect what parents have, why they want these things, but I don't want to be making an academic decision to have our kids take tests past their graduation or participating in state tournaments past graduation because a parent wants to take their kid on a cheap flight. That shouldn't be why we make the decision. So I just am asking, as you gather that data, will you please make sure? I would like to see that.
We will definitely get more comments with this portion of the process. We get very few comments in the initial survey by virtue of the fact that they're just listing preferences.
Sure.
To answer your question completely anecdotally, in my own opinion, because I thought the same thing with respect to why the shorter breaks preference and a longer summer. I do feel like with COVID and with some of the changes in state law with respect to attendance and recognizing our immense challenges with attendance, that parents simply feel like attendance is a little more optional than probably previously. I know I could never miss a day of school or it was the end of the world, but I sent my kids skiing the other day because their grades were good, so I'm a horrible parent. So
my kids had lunch with your kids. I think on the slopes that same day.
Pretty sure.
I did the same thing.
They sent us a picture.
Now we know, and now we know who does it.
That's my feeling on that, but we should get more comments.
Just as a teacher, it's just frustrating, when we come back from Christmas break and I have a kid take a week off. It's frustrating. Yeah. I know we're not going to throw this into these calendars, but just for future, I have had some people bring up that it would be nice. I like what I see on calendar E, the 6th of January, as a teacher.
Work day.
I want to say a teacher, work day. What is it called? Teacher contract day. Because I've had some teachers say, hey, especially for semester classes, we give a week of planning time at the beginning of the year, but now I have a new class and I have no planning time. So I do appreciate that being there, and just maybe in the future kind of keeping that in mind as we go forward with these, having an extra day to help, especially our semester teachers that are doing that. Or even I've had the comment from elementary teachers that it would be nice to have a day to be able to get our lessons in order for the next semester. So, and not just doing grades. And also, along with that, a day at the end of the year. It's really hard to have good quality instruction all the way up until the very end of the year and be able to check out and do my inventory and do this and check in books and do, correct. And all of that stuff is piled on you. And I'm not saying at the very, very end of the year, because I don't think teachers would want the very last day, but to maybe put one of those days in a little bit later in May in the future. That's hard with testing. I recognize that, but just having a day to let teachers be able to clear out their classroom and do their grades and do all of that stuff. We give it to them at the end of the first term, second term, and third term. Why don't we have anything in the fourth term to let them have their, to do their grades? So especially if we want to have quality teaching going all the way up till the end of the school year, that would be very helpful. I'm just going to throw that out there. Thank you for your work on this. And I really do appreciate, because that I was going to bring that up, the balance between the two semesters. So thank you. Appreciate it.
That's the first thing I read because I know Nicole. So when these came out, I went right to the data and I'm like, all right, are these semesters balanced, you know? Just one kind of a thing of just housekeeping. I want to make sure that right now you've got on the draft written PTC for parent-teacher conference. Can we just make sure it matches the grid, your legend? Because it really should be SCPs and...
Yeah, we will.
Will you change all that? Okay, I figured you would, but I just wanted to point that out in case so it's consistent. All right, well, this is an info item. I think you have all the direction you need. Thank you so much to your team. I know that it must be pretty messy in that room as you fling those spaghetti noodles against the wall, because we know that it's a very large committee. We know there's varying opinions, and we know it's a tremendous amount of work. So thank you. And relay that back to your committee, please.
Thank you.
Point of order. Could we request a 5-minute recess so I can get Doug on the Zoom call for
I
our
was
next
just going to
items?
say a 10-minute recess, but we can do 5 minutes.
Whatever would be appropriate.
Let's do 5 minutes. You can get Doug online and... Not yet, Terry. Not moving to adjourn. Is Doug on the line? Oh, okay.
It's after 9.
Ben. All right, are we unmuted? All right, we are back in session. We're gonna, we're gonna turn the time. Ben, are you leading this discussion since Doug's on Zoom?
Yeah, I'll be here and to help facilitate.
There's a lag.
Hold on. We'll fix the sound here.
I'm not talking, my friends.
I just barely changed the speaker preference, so sorry. Hopefully that addresses that issue.
I do not like hearing myself.
We can. I think there's a little bit of a lag.
How are the ski slopes, Doug?
We haven't done a Zoom in a while, so I apologize.
I move we adjourn.
I second that motion. Hey, you have a motion and a second. Have you got an attitude issue?
We still have business to do. Do you want to technically remove your motion?
Was that on the record?
I believe so.
I'll rescind my motion.
All right.
If that makes you feel better. Got seconded twice.
Okay, clearly our settings are not working, so I'm changing that. Sorry. Testing, testing. It's going to be a long meeting if we're going to be echoing.
Can we move on now?
I hope so. I didn't hear an echo that time.
Okay, let's give it a go. We've got three policies to get through tonight. The first of which is implementation of standards and objectives.
Doug, are you ready?
I know. It's okay.
Did we lose Doug?
Doug, are you there?
This is a sign maybe we should adjourn.
Okay, I'm going to try another spot here. Doug, can you hear us? Doug, can you hear us? We can hear you now. Now I'm worried about that echo though. So let's go ahead and, you heard Karen, would you mind presenting implementation of standards and objectives, please?
Go for it, Julie.
On D1A, I just feel like one of the things that I find ineffectual is when we have a lot of discussions, but we don't create an action plan that goes with the discussion. And so I would like to recommend that we change letter A to say reviewing formative learning results and planning interventions to help all students achieve optimal learning. I feel like many times in our PLCs, we get to where we say, oh, this is what they're missing. But then we don't actually say, okay, then I'm going to take these students and do this intervention, and you take those students and do that intervention, or here's a tier 1 intervention we can all do. And so that's my reasoning for desiring that kind of more action-oriented language. Yeah, it's simply changing 2 words, reviewing formative learning results and strike discussing how to, and put and planning interventions to help all students. Oh, don't strike to. I had one more comment on this. Shall I say it now or see if someone else has something else to say? I just wondered if, in the past, I'm now looking at section E, and E1 says the district shall develop tools for periodic assessment of student progress to allow the calculation of student growth. And I know that in the past, we have worked really hard to make sure that we are only giving the assessments that are necessary, and that in the past we have felt that we have over-assessed. And so I just wonder if the board has any appetite of creating some sort of note in this section that we do not support over-assessing, and that we want to make sure that the assessments we give are of great value. And I do not have language to propose for that.
Doug, what are your thoughts? Or Dawn, you can chime in as well if you have anything to say. Or Rich. Do you feel good about that, Julie? See what he brings back?
Yeah, I do, but I also,
Yeah, or other.
I think it's important that it's something that is not just, let's just please Julie on this deal. I would like to make sure we all feel
I just
like
want to
that's
first of all make
Yeah,
sure that addresses your concern, and then Rick, Anthony has something to say about it.
Doug, and I apologize, I had put eyes on this and didn't catch it. I'm wondering, and looking at Don and some others, if number 1 was trying to add some value to benchmark assessments that we had, and we've since discontinued, under the spirit of what you're saying, Julie, benchmark assessments in Granite. So I wonder if 1 is a hangover from that benchmark assessment feeling.
May I speak to that too, Rick? I also think it speaks to, in response to the feedback we received from our teachers on the PPL survey and focus groups that from 2020 that we're still working on enacting that, many of those recommendations. One of the big recommendations was that, from our teachers, was that we had an item bank for teachers, so that they had exemplars and examples of possible lines of evidence that they could collect from students at different proficiency levels. And so we are currently working on a project where we're paying teachers to submit items that are being vetted and included in a bank that teachers can opt to use if they so choose. So that might be one of those tools, Julie, that would be mentioned in one, be just a tool for teachers that they could use as they saw fit.
Yeah, is it the extension thing? Because I was just going to bring that up. No. Oh, okay. Okay. Come to a mic, though, so our online listeners. While she's coming up, Julie, your addition of, on D, Ben, if you want to scroll back, when you said interventions, can it be interventions and extensions?
Doug, can you hear us? I had to change a setting. We were
So
experiencing
that
a
is
problem online.
D1A. Just take Julie's change and add extensions to interventions.
Thanks for thinking of that.
Say it again, Doug.
Yep. All right, Michelle, go ahead.
I don't know if this is appropriate for this conversation right here, but some feedback that we've heard from our special ed teachers is somewhere in this assessment plan. They need data that they can provide for IEPs. And just as you guys are considering this, again, I don't know if it's appropriate for policy, but as we make plans, something that is easy for special ed teachers to collect data from to fulfill their legal requirements.
So instead adding the word, maybe Julie, the district shall develop tools for adequate periodic assessment would that help? Because if it's adequate to, I don't know if that's enough.
Short answer is yes.
What's the long answer?
The details as to why that is yes. But one really is, to Rick's point, benchmarking or common district-wide assessments that were required that are no longer required. But two speaks to the principle of allowing teachers and principals to work together to build common formative assessments for learning that then informs their instructions, interventions, or extensions. Not that long, a little longer.
Well, and if I could add to that, progress monitoring would also follow in the same vein.
I was just going to say that even when I read this, Rick, I thought, I wonder if number one is about those benchmarks. Like, you can tell in the language that that's what it's referring to.
Chris?
Mine was also one.
Oh, okay. All right. Any further concerns or comments about this policy? If not, I'll entertain a motion as a first reading.
I motion that we approve Article 2L, implementation of standards and objectives for a first reading.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the table to approve as a first reading Article 2L, implementation of standards and objectives. Any further questions or concerns from the board? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, Article 10A4, senior high school graduation standards and requirements.
I just want to clarify. So if a student is in their traditional high school and they do not receive they do not get a CPA of 3.0, they will get a Granite District diploma. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And they will not walk with their class, so they will not attend graduation. They can attend it, but not
Yes.
fully. And that also goes for if they are at Granite Connect, that if they do not have a 3.0, they will get their diploma, but they will not be able to walk.
As the policy is currently written, yes, that would be correct.
Okay, so my first thing is that I feel very strongly that if a student is at Granite Connect and they receive the credits that they need in order to graduate academically, it is a huge deal to walk. That is a huge accomplishment. And if you show up to Granite Connect, the day you walk in that door, there's no way that your CPA is good enough that you can, making that up is super hard, and you're already putting every moment that you have into just making up your academic credits. And so I would suggest that we strike letter B.
B what?
I'm sorry, B1B.
Is that, what is the current, isn't it if they don't have a citizenship, a CPA of 2, they currently don't?
So the CPA requirement, as written in the draft that you're looking at here, that's projected, that the only change there is a change from a 2.0 to a 3.0. So that's what our current policy is. That's what it currently states, but it just states 2.0 rather than 3.0. So the addition of not allowing students to participate in commencement exercises, that is actually something that our high schools have been doing. That's not in policy, but they have been doing. So they've kind of not been doing what's in policy, but have been enacting something outside of policy. So we added that piece to reflect what our high schools have actually been doing as a way to motivate students to earn that CPA that's required. But Julie does bring up a good point in the fact that we do have one particular high school, Granite Connections, that's kind of is a special case. There are students that might be in their high school that are earning a Granite School District diploma that would want to participate in the commencement exercises at their high school, but would not be getting that high school's diploma. So we'd want to specify something if that's the concern, Julie. Probably that's very specific to our special schools like Granite Connections.
I like that better, because I do think that B holds some value with traditional schools, but I just want to make sure that I think it's a totally different story in some of our special cases. So I like your suggestion, Dawn.
So instead of saying Granite District diploma, saying a school-specific diploma?
So just clarification, it says 3.0 was the Granite District diploma in B1, but in B2, the school diploma, that's the individual school, it said 2.0 and we're changing that to 3.0.
Yes, that should be 3.0.
So was the Granite District diploma always had the 3.0 CPA?
That is only for participation in commencement.
Okay.
So it's a 24 credit diploma, and the participation in graduation activities, that's the 3.0
CPA.
requirement. Yes, the CPA requirement.
So it was a higher requirement than our traditional high school diploma?
No, it wasn't.
It was not?
It was
That's
a
new?
it's currently a 2.0 for all of the schools, yes.
But Dawn, if I am attending Kearns High and I have completed the correct 27 credits that I need, but I got a 2.8 CPA, I will receive a Granite District diploma and I will not walk in the ceremony.
I would hope that that case would never happen, because we'd have plenty of opportunities, and our counselors work really hard, and our graduation committees with kiddos to catch those kids and work with them. And the CPA revision committee's vision, kind of the best practices behind and guidelines for our schools behind this policy, would ask that students are encouraged to recover any deficient credits at the time that they lose them. So what we currently see happening is kids wait, schools wait until the senior year to start remediating and recovering that credit. And what we'd like to see is that happening where the deficiency occurs. So if it happens in 7th grade, we get kids in the practice of taking care of that in 7th grade. And so that it's not something that once they get to 9th grade, they're just in the habit of going, oh, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll worry about that later. But that we're really proactive. And so in that case, Julie, I hope that would never happen. And I really couldn't, a student being that close, I would not imagine that there wouldn't be some pretty serious intervention on behalf of that school team to make sure that that student
I could kind of speak to that if you'd like, firsthand experience, having worked at 3 of our high schools, both as an assistant and principal. We spend a lot of time working with students to help them recover that citizenship credit. So it's rare that a student doesn't take advantage of those opportunities, and their counselors work with them extensively, not only on their academic recovery, but also their citizenship recovery. And schools have quite a bit of latitude on how to help provide those opportunities.
We've been piloting this at 2 schools. Can you just speak to that a little bit, the experience that they've had, any feedback that they've had with this, as far as, have you noticed? I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that this is based on 5 characteristic points, and that, well, maybe they might be deficient on one. It might be like attendance has been a struggle, let's just be honest. Attendance has been a struggle, but that the other 4, especially if they're at one of our, at Granite Connections, their resilience might be brilliant, and those others would possibly bring the rest of that up. Has that been the case that you've seen? Tell us some of your experience.
Absolutely, Nicole. So we're in the 2nd year of piloting this in secondary. As you know, we've operationalized this in all of our elementary schools, but we're in the 2nd year of a secondary pilot. So last year we piloted in the Olympus network, and this year we added this Kearns network. So we learned a great deal in the 1st year of the pilot that we were able to apply in the 2nd. We followed the data very carefully and looked at comparing CPAs overall quarter to quarter. So for example, last year in the 1st year of the pilot, we looked at all of the Olympus Network secondary students school by school to see what their CPA was, the average CPA was for the quarter that we started the graduative Granite characteristics versus when we just did the citizenship. And last year in the 1st year of the pilot, it was kind of a slow start. We kind of saw those fluctuate a little bit, but by the end of the year, especially at our high school, we saw those scores progressively climbing at Olympus High School. So the overall scores progressively climbed, as they also did in the junior high schools. This year, as we're tracking 2 networks, the Kearns network, Secondary Network and the Olympus Secondary Network, we have found that compared to this time last year, so that's for our schools in the first year of the pilot, as well as our schools in the second year, every single school has improved their overall CPA. So when we break those down into the 5 characteristics, like you mentioned, Nicole, what we do find is that the lowest scoring characteristic is dependability. And for secondary, that's all attendance and punctuality. What's interesting about that is what under our current citizenship policy comprises, if schools are following what's outlined in the high school manual, that's what comprises the citizenship grade for the most part. So a student could have all kinds of, excellent behavior in other ways, but if they had a certain number of tardies or unexcused absences, they would automatically default to a lower citizenship grade. And so what that tells us then is exactly what you said. The kids having 4 other places where they can get a score has helped improve and increase their overall CPAs.
The comment that I made when we were discussing this originally was that I appreciate that this is now a comprehensive one, because kids, what I'm hearing for parents and kids even, is that if they're tardy to a class, they just don't go, because they know that their CPA will be impacted, but if they don't go, they can get their parent to excuse it, and so they just don't show up. I would much rather have a kid there and be able to say as a teacher, hey, look, if you're going to show up on time for the rest of the quarter, I'll improve this grade, because the teachers have the purview to go in and change that. I would much rather see that than have it be completely dependent on that attendance, because it's not. I want the kid there, even if they're 10 minutes late, even if they're 5 minutes late. I want them there. I want them in their seat, because that's going to be much more effective than having them just gone. So.
Well, let me be clear. I love our new citizenship plan. My question is going to be about whether or not it's required for graduation. And so, but I see huge value in the plan, and I have more to say about that in a minute, but I would also be in favor of the idea that when a student is transferred to Granite Connect, that we allow them to start with a clean slate on their citizenship grade point average, and then we ask them to make a 3.0 in order to walk, not in order to get a diploma, but in order to walk.
Julie.
I would support that too.
Julie, if I might, on Granite Connection, I think it's important John's point not be lost. How each school handles makeup is, they have tremendous latitude in how they do that. That's not prescribed in policy, how makeup is conducted. So your concern with Granite Connection is not lost on me as principal at Granite Connection. Confession here is it was not tremendously difficult to make up your citizenship at Granite Connection, because I had that latitude at that location on the makeup side.
So right now, we're kind of beyond wordsmithing in this policy, so we can consider moving this back to law and policy for further discussion if the board feels that would be a good direction, because what we're starting to talk about is like the core of the policy, which we usually kind of debate in law and policy meeting. If the board feels comfortable, we can go on, but we could also bring this back to law and policy to work out maybe a few of these bugs, questions, then bring it back to the full board later. What is your appetite, board, for doing that? Or do you feel comfortable moving forward tonight? What's your appetite?
I support that.
Which one?
I support bringing it back to the Law and Policy Committee.
Okay. Others? All right.
I personally am okay with the way it is, but.
That's why I'm asking the question. Chime in.
I'm comfortable with the way it is.
In which case, I have some other things I would want to ask about it, if we decide not to take it.
Okay.
On the same policy.
Yeah.
So maybe not. then.
Just in case it
Just making
influences
sure.
your vote.
Are they questions that would change this policy?
They're
Or like-
pretty core to the entire
Oh,
thing,
Okay.
you know.
We do have the latitude also to approve it as a first reading and still bring it back to law and policy. So we technically can do both.
Let's do that. That's my vote.
If we want to do that.
If we brought it back to law and policy after a first vote, after a first reading, and then we came back, but there were significant changes.
That's the purpose of a first to
Can
second
you-
reading. Mhm.
And we don't even have to approve it on a second reading.
That's my question.
We can say we'd like to have a final.
We'll approve it for a second
Right.
reading, but we'd like to.
We could say, you know what, because so the changes were significant, we could do a second reading and a final action.
I think that would be fine.
Okay. Do you want to touch on your other concerns?
No. I think I'll wait for law and policy meeting and we'll get those ironed out and maybe they will be presented in next board meeting and maybe they won't. We'll see. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right, do we have a motion for that then? To approve this as a first reading with the indicated changes already noted?
Well, wait, we didn't make any changes to this
Oh,
one,
just
right?
kidding, that was the other one. I'm tired. What time is it? Okay,
I'll motion that we approve Article 10A4, Senior High School Graduation Standards and Requirements as a first reading.
Second.
we have a motion and a second on the table to approve as a first reading, Article 10A4, Senior High School Graduation Standards and Requirements. Any further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, final first reading, advertising and distributing information. You taking the lead on this, Ben?
I'm just making sure our sound works and
Doug?
Doug is still able to chat with us. Are you still there, Doug? Can you hear us? We had to change a setting.
Hear him and find
Doug?
Thanks, Don. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
nothing to add to this one, so
Run while
Go
you
ahead,
can.
yes. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Try again, Doug. He told me to go ahead. I'm texting with him. We have, as part of our traditional policy, there's a memo that's associated with this that basically restricts advertising to outside organizations that are not affiliated with a government entity. And the memo basically indicates that schools are not intended to be, it's basically not in our mission to be a distribution hub for marketing materials for outside organizations, third-party organizations. I think the express language of the memo is kids are not billboards and schools are not something to that effect. So this policy aligns with that component. However, in an effort to bolster some of our actual programming within our schools and ensure there's equitable access to different types of opportunities within some of our communities, we have considered some other policy considerations that are tied to access to our facilities from private organizations that could potentially provide particularly our at-risk kids with opportunities that may not be sponsored by government entities. Basically competitive sports and some other things of that nature. And so we look to, in line with that change in philosophy and approach, wanted to also change the policy that's associated with this. So you see the primary language change in this is private athletic opportunities that we would then also be permitted to disseminate information where we could expressly identify that there's an association with the High School Activities Association sanctioned sport, such as basketball or soccer, or something that's already within, that we know there's going to be a direct benefit to our schools and sanctioned sports and activities that are there. And also provide, you can see the language there, just a direct benefit to district students and families that we feel is going to be a benefit to our schools. So I don't want to overspeak on that.
So, go ahead, Connie.
Oh, I just appreciate the fact that they have to have a written that the district has to know about it and not just the schools are responsible for that. I think it's good that the district has oversight as to what's going on.
Provides a little consistency.
Yeah. Hey, I just have a question. So it says private organizations. Like my head right went to soccer because that's what my kids played. And there's a lot of club teams out there, and there's a lot of rec teams, and there's a lot of other teams. So they have to have the written approval, but does that mean 10 different teams could come and want to solicit in an elementary school, let's say, or a junior high? How would that approval look like? Like,
So if you look
so we're
at,
not in, you know what I mean?
We're kind of looking, if you look at the language there, it's comparable to what we already do with recreation programs that are sponsored by local recreation programs. So we will give the approval that it's consistent and meets our policy. After that, you can see the verbiage there is that upon receipt of written approval from the district principal shall determine the most appropriate means for distributing materials. So that could be a banner on a fence. That could be a flyer within a school. I will tell you that 90% of distribution of these types of materials is simply through Peach Jar. And so that's that electronic distribution system. So those groups or clubs would have to pay for the access for Peach Jar. They would specify the schools they want to send that information to. And we would in turn approve all 10 of those if we can show that there's a direct benefit to Granite School District students.
Okay.
And again, sanctioned sports.
Right.
We had to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
Again, trying to find a direct, if we open it up beyond sanctioned sports, we really are opening up a huge can of worms, and that is untenable. And then we are overwhelming our parents with information that may or may not be a direct benefit to them.
Okay. So a principal is the one that actually would make sure this information gets to the public if the district approves it.
Unless it goes through Peach Jar, that just bypasses the school altogether.
Okay. Clark?
My question is just, is this really any different than what at least recent historical practice has already been? And we're just...
Well, I guess I'm busted. No, it's not much different. And let me give an example of that. Skyline recreation baseball program that's pretty much city sponsored but is not funded or endorsed. It's run under our Skyline High School banner, even though it's not technically affiliated or associated with but we consider it a recreation program and comparable to other recreational opportunities that are available within the community, and we have permitted access for distribution for that particular program. We have not permitted access to competitive baseball programs. So there's a little bit of difference. Another example would be Ute Conference football, which feign association with our high schools and use our team names and colors and logos and build up those programs. We see a direct benefit in turn to those programs. We've tried to always tie that back to and say, this is technically the recreation program. It's the only recreation football that's available to kids. So we're gonna go ahead, and it's within the spirit of our policy and grant access. Now, when we've had private organizations come and want access for distribution, we have declined those by and large. And we have not disseminated information on sports that are not, again, sanctioned. There is a caveat to that, because club sports within a particular high school can receive distribution access directly from the principal because they are associated with the school by virtue of their club status. As long as they're an official club with the school itself, the school gets to decide if they want to. That's the school's program, in other words, and we don't govern that or micromanage that at the district office.
So Ben, that speaks to the unsanctioned sports
Correct.
issue, right?
There might be other programs or opportunities within a school that are not sanctioned sports that could still be disseminated within that school, not necessarily to other schools within the feeder, though.
Not to schools within the network.
But that's only if they have a club at the school?
Correct. So, for instance, we, previous to lacrosse becoming a sanctioned sports, many of our schools had lacrosse teams that were club teams that were playing part of a private league, but they were associated, they were using Skyline or Olympus's, some of our other schools' names and logos. They had an advisor. They were officially clubs under our policy and kind of associated with the schools that way. And so again, the schools had the ability to disseminate that information. We did not govern that.
Ben, do you remember we were at this, I think it was at Hunter, that we were at a town hall, and the Cypress Hunter, was it Kearns? It was like all three of them, their mountain bike team was there, and they were trying to recruit, and they saw huge changes for their kids, and it was a huge benefit. And they, that's a 7 through 12 deal. Can they create a club at the junior high level?
Yeah, literally that evening at that particular event, I pulled up the policy. I showed it to Danny Sterling, the principal there. I said, will you get with these folks and get them an advisor? And the deadline for approving their club status, you remember that was early on in the school year. There's actually within our club's policy a deadline. And I said, would you work with them? And certainly wink and nod. There's some little flexibility here to get them compliant with our policy and applied it appropriately.
And can you create a club at an elementary?
Doug's going to have to clarify. You can't do, he's texting me. You can't do clubs in junior high. There's a prohibition on that. But it could still be at the high school level.
So they cannot do clubs at the junior high?
They cannot, and they're not permissible at the elementary level either.
Which means that under this policy, those unsanctioned sports cannot advertise to anyone in the junior high or the elementary?
Under that provision, becoming a club, no.
So they wouldn't be able to, for example, recruit for the mountain biking team at the junior high or elementary, only at the high school?
Only through the high school.
Yeah.
Now, we could, I would not recommend changing our club's policy.
No.
We could certainly look at changing this advertising policy and allowing our clubs to advertise through their feeders. And Doug, can you hear us at all, or are you just going to text me? We can hear you now. I'm pretty sure our online audience can't hear, and I've given up trying to. I've been texting Stephen Powell. I've been doing everything to figure out why these settings are not working still. So, sorry, online audience, you can't hear Doug, but.
Ben will summarize.
You can just if you'll just kind of summarize what he says so our online listeners can know.
Do you want to speak to, would it be a better provision to simply amend this policy, Doug, to allow for dissemination of clubs through the feeders?
So are sanctioned sports okay to do at the elementary and junior high? That's
Yes.
what you're saying, right? Okay,
That
so it's
would
just
be
the unsanctioned.
included in this provision. And I envision most of those would just come through Peach Jar, and those sports would, we would look and evaluate if there's a direct benefit to that particular school community and authorize the posting.
I support doing that because in my communities, I see unsanctioned sports are serving, they're serving a huge function to connect kids to school even as early as junior high and elementary, and that's unsanctioned sports, that not just the sanctioned ones. And so I feel like that's important to be able to encourage them to make those connections earlier.
I think we would want to have the protection of the club status, having an advisor at the school.
And I love that protection.
So maybe it is an additional bullet here. Maybe it becomes a new number 4, and we'd speak to clubs separately, and that they are permitted to advertise through their networks.
At one point, I had asked about putting some language in here that makes sure that we're not distributing information. It says that opportunities that directly benefit the Granite School District students and families, but that it's also not in competition with our current programs. Is there does anybody care about that?
Where does it say that?
It does.
What number is that?
That's
We,
why.
we talked about this in law and policy, and what Nicole's getting at is there are some clubs or some groups out there that they say, hey, come play for my team, but if you play for my team, you cannot participate in your school team.
Okay.
And so what we discussed was, is there some language in there that we can basically deny somebody's request to market and advertise if in essence it's gonna come around and not be, and hurt our own athletic programs? Does that make, or other programs?
We would,
So-
there would be older competitive baseball programs that would probably fall under, that might pull kids from their traveling teams, and they wouldn't let the kids participate in the high school program. I would consider that competitive against us. We could add that type of prohibition in section, down here in section E on the prohibitions. And I do remember that conversation. I thought we'd added some language, so we can go back and do that. Does that work, Doug?
I just didn't see it, so I
Under
just.
prohibitions, yeah.
And Doug did want us to review this content section and these prohibitions. You can see the added language: violent or hostile messages, images or messages that demean or disparage, promote entertaining products that are not legally permissible for our students to participate in. We've added harmful materials provision and political causes, parties. With respect to section D above, which is when they're renting our facilities. We do have political parties that rent our facilities, and we would allow them to post their content during those types of events. So is there any questions or concerns about those prohibitions?
I have a quick question. So if a club sport that wants to advertise in our schools is, sometimes they're sponsored by certain groups, or somebody's parent has a, business that sponsors them or something, would that fall under this? Would we have to check those? If they have a logo on their, you know what I mean, on their jersey or whatever?
No, this would be direct advertisements coming
Okay, so
through like Peach Jar or flyers through our
Advertising only,
schools. I want to be clear, that's a good question, and what we're really talking about is banners that might be on our fences to sports, those might get sold by sports teams. What this really, no, I think I answered the question.
Yeah, just making sure that's just for advertising. Okay.
So is it, I keep going back to, I had a problem with J. It's now E1, J. Just because I think there's a fine line between endorsing political causes or political parties or candidates and allowing them to advertise versus, I go back to the whole, I use the example in law and policy meeting that there was a particular candidate that sponsored an athlete, and so she got a banner that had her name on it up on the fence. And it didn't say sponsored, an athlete, one of our current athletes sponsored by. It just said her name and her political position, which I don't, it makes it look like that was an endorsement almost, but at the same time, I understand that was a good, it was a good thing to sponsor an athlete, and I don't. So how do we reconcile that? I'm just opening the can of worms.
Sure, and I think our philosophy and approach to that when we've had those questions come up is that we fully respect that those who are within their respective office can be identified by that office. A legislator can be identified as representative so-and-so. That's not necessarily a campaign endorsement. It's a simple acknowledgement of a fact, right? So that we would accept those types of recognitions and opportunities. When you go out to a football game as a school board member, We absolutely, it's appropriate to recognize elected officials who are within that capacity, and whatever office that might be locally, and recognize their contributions to our communities. We see a lot of municipalities who handle this where they won't allow candidates into, or political organizations into a parade, for instance, but they will allow current office holders. And the distinction is fair to all by virtue of the fact that they are in fact holding that office, and it is a public service. And so we do want to recognize those types of individuals where we don't always have the ability to recognize every candidate or campaign or cause.
But, and I appreciate that and agree to that extent. I'm just wondering if that part right there, that Jay will come back and say, you guys are, if somebody currently who is in office, that is an endorsement of that candidate. Is this going to become a problem?
I think it's also first, and Doug, feel free to chime in. I know you're obviously part of that conversation. There's a First Amendment issue here to take into consideration. Is somebody just simply acknowledging their office an endorsement? If you as board members come to a football game, we say we'd like to recognize Chris Wynn at the Cypress High football. She's one of our board members. Have we now officially endorsed her in any way, shape, or form? And I think somebody's really going to have a hard time making an argument that that's some form of endorsement. If we go out as a baseball team at Cottonwood High, I saw all your banners on your building the other day. That's the baseball facilities. I was driving out of the parking lot. If there's one of those that is sponsored in part or purchased by an elected official, I don't think that's an endorsement on our part. I think it's an endorsement from them of our program. So it's kind of a reverse endorsement. I recognize there are going to be those who try to question and really strain at an ad on that, but I feel very comfortable that there's some precedence here by virtue of what other organizations, entities, governmental entities are doing to kind of balance that.
So do you allow a person to sponsor an athlete who is a candidate and just have their name there?
We would already, by virtue of the fact that as long as they're not identifying themselves as a candidate, they're just a regular private citizen, we would allow that already.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're really clear on that.
And by virtue of the fact that we put things into policy, we have policies in place for a reason, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, we will have an issue that comes up on this down the road, and we'll have to remind them what the policy is. So I put that disclaimer out there.
As long as you have to deal with it, that's
Sounds fair.
I also do not want to flood our schools with advertising. I would like to have a conversation about this concern that we have that our kids are coming to school not prepared to learn, hungry or not in a good place in their mental health, things like that, that we're working hard to try to fix, but that really we recognize that we can't fix them alone, and we need to reach out and be a part of an entire society that's working on meeting these basic needs. And so I just wonder if there's room in here for us to make connections for kids to nonprofit organizations that are going to meet those basic needs, because that means that then we're working collaboratively with them and leaning on them, and they're leaning on us. And while I say this, I also think that this opens the door so wide open that maybe it's out of control. So I'm not sure that I necessarily support the idea. I think I'd just like to have the conversation or see what our experts think about this.
Hey, go ahead, Doug. Go ahead. No, please take, and I'll fill in the gaps.
I think that something is sinking in now that didn't in our phone conversation, and that is that you're saying that if we have a partner, then we allow them to advertise or do whatever else we need to do to help them connect with our students. Is this correct?
Correct. So for instance, a nonprofit after-school program that we have created an MOU with locally at that particular school location, that now has become a school program and the school can advertise it. They do not need an access card to do so.
And there's a rubric of things that they need, or qualifications that they need to meet in order to be our partner. Like I remember Doug, you saying that they can't charge more than $50. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Okay.
That's one parameter. Another parameter might be they would need to provide fee waivers, right? And there's a number of other components. Some of the groups that we have broadly as a district MOUs with, or memorandums of understanding, are nonprofit dental providers that come into schools and provide basic dental cleanings and services. There's a number of those that work through with JD Talbot and the foundation and our family outreach folks. And so there's a couple of opportunities there that already exist.
Long story short, Julie, if I could summarize this, hopefully concisely, is basically everything you just described with the nonprofits. I feel like that's an administrative function instead of it belong in this policy, right? They know they have processes and procedures set in place to vet these companies, and so we aren't just, you know what I'm saying? Because whether it's United Way or after school or whatever.
I was concerned that this policy was limiting them.
Sure.
Of that. So I'm glad to see that it is not.
Yeah.
That's
Rich, did you want to add anything?
No, and it's just, yeah, no gaps in that, but that, Julie, you just summarized it. This doesn't limit the resources that we are able to connect families to per their need, right? And so a lot of the partnerships that we've engaged with to provide these services, clearly they're providing services that really aren't in our role or responsibility or purview in public ed to deliver or provide, but we simply act as a connector to that, and this doesn't preclude that, as you've just summarized.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
Oh, I'll motion that we approve the first reading of Article, what is that? Five. What's the C again?
5C.
Oh. What's the number? Article 5C10, advertising and distributing information. I was like, what is that, like 500? Wow.
That says 10:33 p.m. That's what that says.
I missed it. Did somebody second that?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. We have a motion.
I
and
love
a
being on
second.
the record for stupid things like that.
We have a motion and a second to approve as a first reading Article 5C10. I can't even do it. Advertising and distributing information. It has been seconded as well. Any further questions or concerns? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I should have said with the, but it's too late.
Oh, with the recommended changes.
With the recommended
Yeah.
change.
But it's a first reading, so those changes can come back, so we're good.
So Doug, the change.
Yeah. All right, we have 2 second readings. Ben?
Yeah, you see the, I'm trying to decide. which
Article
one is
9A,
first.
1A.
Non-discrimination. Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up.
I'd like to motion that we approve Article 9A1A, non-discrimination in employment for a final reading.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second on the table to approve as a second and final reading, Article 9A1A, non-discrimination in employment. Any further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 9A1X, reduction in force.
I make a motion that we approve Article 9A1X, reduction in force for a final reading.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the table to approve as a second and final reading, Article 9A1X, reduction in force. Any further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Doug. All right, our next agenda item is a board recognition of our very own Terry Bodden, who's legendary here. So, Terry, we have a plaque for you. And it looks like this. And it's a gavel because you served as board president from 2015 to the end of 2018. And so we want to recognize not only your service as a board member, but your service as the leader of the board for those 4 years. I'll bring this over to you in just a second, but I'm going to say a couple things if that's all right. So Terry has been an awesome board member. I've had the privilege of serving with him 8 of his 16 years, so half of them for me. Terry is a huge advocate for kids. He loves kids and he wants to see them succeed. He also has been a big cheerleader and advocate for our teachers and a good voice to them. And he also has been very engaged in his own community, representing parents and listening to their concerns. And I was talking to Rich and he said he has intellectual integrity. He studies issues carefully. And he's willing to listen to opposing views and take it all in. And at the end, when he knows that a vote's not going to keep everybody happy or make everybody happy, he still has the courage to do what he feels is right because he has taken the time to study the issue, to meet with people, and to do in his heart what he feels is right. So Terry, just know the whole board loves you. We love how lighthearted you can be, and you keep it fun, and your jokes and your little sidebar comments, they're fun. And just know we're going to miss you. We're going to miss your, commitment to the district, and just know that we love you and we support you, and we cheer you on as you move on to your new adventures. So thank you, Terry. We're going to go ahead and present this to you. I'm going to bring it to you. How cute this is. It's so cute. So there you go. Yep. So we'll give you
I'm sure you can get it
We'll
up.
give you we'll do the board.
Give it to your grandkids and they'll get it up.
What's that?
Give it to your grandkids, look at it up.
Oh, yeah, they will. So you want me to say something?
Only if you want to.
Only if you want to.
Well, first of all,
But pull down your mic. I'm going to make you pull down your mic still.
we want to recognize Kim Chandler, who will be the new board member. She's been here tonight, and she and I visited privately, but I want to congratulate her publicly and know that she'll do all she can to continue good things. Also, I want to thank the GEA for your public statement. That was kind of you. Emotions are a little difficult. I've told myself all month I wasn't going to cry, but it's difficult because Granite School District has become a real part of me. And I've served with many great board members, many great administrators, and most importantly, public ed employees. And like Dr. Nye said, anyone who works in public ed is a public ed employee. Oftentimes we just recognize our teachers, but there's so much just go on. And so I will miss that association a lot. I won't miss discussions about policy. My only regret was that I never was considered to be on the policy committee.
False. You requested not to be.
But I know that Granite will excel in blessing the lives of students, and it's been a real privilege for me to be a part of that. And I just publicly wanted to thank all of our employees in the Granite School District. You've made our lives, Rhonda's and my life, much more pleasant to be with and around, and we appreciate that. I'll look forward to watching you all succeed in the future. Thank you. I move that we adjourn.
Don't second that, anybody. We're not done. They're already talking about me on Twitter. I will have you know that I'm not letting this meeting adjourn until we get through the agenda. So there. Okay. We will have you adjourn just a minute. We've got to turn the, we're almost to the end, guys. Hang with me. Superintendent report, and Dr. Nye is going to be short tonight. Yeah, And then board members, I would just ask that you keep your comments maybe a little shorter than usual due to the time of, yeah.
Yeah, look at me on that.
But
That's
wait,
great.
we're going to have Dr. Nye go first.
Thanks, Board President. I just wanted to give a teaser on a couple things. One, well, first of all, I'll step way back. I was inspired. I'm always inspired by our students when we see the good work that they're doing, and whether it's the holiday cards that our students created and we're sending out. But Friday night, had the opportunity to see our Hunter High students perform Beauty and the Beast. And this was a unified effort between special education students and general education students. And I'm telling you, I had all the feels that could ever come. I was moved. I was laughing one moment, crying the next. Truly remarkable to see our students perform on that, and the teachers and the support that went into pulling that off. I mean, it was truly, truly remarkable. So I appreciated that event and what it meant for the school and the community. Second, just a teaser. Graduation rates are coming out. They were supposed to come out or released by the state on November 30th. I've not seen an actual press release. So they might be embargoed, sort of, but I feel confident suggesting that we as a district increased our graduation rate last year. During a very difficult year, we grew by 2.1% in our graduation rate, which is significant. That has the impact of about 119 students more that graduated this year than they did the previous year. And really appreciate the hard work of the students, the teachers, administrators, staff, in making that happen. And we'll have a much more in-depth conversation regarding some of those metrics that we were looking at and celebrating. And lastly, Terry, thank you. Appreciate who you are and how you bring your best self to the Granite School District every day. I appreciate having the opportunity to really get to know you. I knew you before I came to Granite. And Martin, Dr. Bates, and other staff would talk about your insight and intellect. And so when the opportunity came to Granite, I knew that I'd have the opportunity to get to know you even better. And I can just say it's been a true honor and privilege of serving and working with you for and behalf of the students and families in this district. Thank you.
Clark.
I've said plenty tonight already. Terry, my sincere best wishes to you and your family.
I had a lot more to say than Clark. Sorry, Clark.
Do you need a timer?
I tried. I tried to set the bar.
I'm like seeing what I can take out really quick. But mostly I just want to say that Julie, Dr. Nye, and Kim and I attended a new board meeting training, and a quote I wrote down from it that one of our one of our classes taught us was, board work is slow work, and it's slow work on purpose because it leaves room to get it right and to get input and to make sure we're doing correct. And I just want to say, Terry, I just thought of you because that is you in a nutshell. You want to get it right for us and for our students. And I've learned so much from you. And you're an incredible board member, but you're just an incredible person. And I appreciate you. So thank you.
I have been able to see some incredible things. Notably, South Kern's exiting CSI this month has been, it was fun to celebrate that on our snow day. And I have to admit, I slept my class the last 10 minutes, so I could get to that. But it was fun to be able to acknowledge them. I had a teacher that came and covered, but thanks to I just want to acknowledge also I didn't get to go to the Beauty and the Beast, but Charity did do also her regular musical like the week before, and then she did that Beauty and the Beast one, and they did reuse the set, but man, just to be able to do that turnaround is phenomenal, and what a great job they did for both of those, so thank you. I do want to say, Chief Porterfield, also extend a thanks to your people. The response that we had for the Kearns High incident, I think it's amazing that you can track somebody down and be able to take care of something in less than 24 hours, that it was on there. And I know there was a lot of criticism that went around from that community, but also I did get some appreciations that said thank you for your quick response and quickly taking care of the situation. So thank you, and pass that on to also your people that responded to that, as well as our own district employees who were doing that, and our admin at this school. And then just, of course, Terry, thank you. I think we all, at least I did, we all get on the board with a certain mission in mind and a certain, this is why I'm on the board. And I think coming in, there were some things that the reasons why I came on were certain things that happened, and I appreciate the insight that you have shared, that you have taught us, and I have grown a lot working with you, and appreciate your thoughtfulness and appreciate your humor. And you will be missed, but wish you the best in everything that you do. So thank you.
I also attended Beauty and the Beast at Hunter and was truly impressed with how well the students knew their parts and how the support was surrounding them. I came home and wanted so much for media to be there to see what a wonderful, what can happen when they work together like that. It was awesome. Terry, thanks. Over the years, it's been wonderful. Thank you for your leadership and all that you've done. It's been a joy to be on the board with you. Your teasing and humor have made our meetings fun and interesting and really worth being here for them. It's been wonderful over the years to get to know Rhonda and to do things with her also. You'll be missed, and just know how much I appreciate your help and your leadership that you've been to me over the years. Thanks.
My favorite thing about that Beauty and the Beast deal was that it was like true art. It wasn't like somebody trying to copy Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. It was like that actress who portrayed Belle and the actor who portrayed the Beast, they said, what do I think this character would look like? And then that's how they portrayed it. And it was touching, and it was human, and it's exactly what art should be. It was their own interpretation, and coming from such a different perspective, I felt like they had such a different spin on their characters. And so I felt like I grew from watching that in ways that I don't often with theater, because of seeing that true art in motion, you know. So I really appreciate all who put that together, and also the beauty of seeing what true inclusion can do. Again, it was such a clear example of what inclusion can be. Terry, it's been a stressful 2 years for me to figure out how to be a board member, and you have kept me calm over there. And you didn't know that was calm, did you? What I was doing the last 2 years. I'm sure it didn't look calm. But you have been a calming influence right here next to me, and you've said a joke at exactly the right time, and have been a mentor. And I really appreciate, I appreciate your friendship as much as I appreciate your great service. You've been a servant of this district the entire time that my children have been in schools. And it's sometimes hard to measure the impact of a board member on a kid, but I am thrilled to know that my children have been influenced by you. So thank you for that.
Do you want to add anything, Terry, before I go?
You write all these good things down and send them to my children so that you can convince them that I really am a nice guy.
I'm going to mail you the minutes next month after we approve them. That'll be my gift. That'll be my post-Christmas gift to you, Terry. A lot has been said about Sheriff Parks is the drama teacher at Hunter High, and she does do such a great job. Just somebody mentioned that they put on Cinderella the week before Beauty and the Beast. And not only did they have the normal, performances, but she always does a Saturday matinee. And she does it for kids who need the lights up or need a place. It's okay if they shout out. So speaking of inclusion, she's really big on that. And so if kids are averse to flashing lights or loud sounds or dark theaters, they can still come and participate. And this year, in the middle of that production, one of my friend's daughters kind of escaped and went right on stage and was just dancing right with the characters on stage until she found out. And of course, she goes chasing after her little 4-year-old, I think. I don't know the age, but anyway, but she was just saying, isn't it awesome that the show went on and nobody cared that her daughter went, just as sometimes toddlers do, they wander off and do their own thinking and do what they want. And so it was just, so not only that is, so she's really big on inclusion and making sure that all people who want to attend and appreciate the arts have an opportunity to, even if they don't like loud sounds, flashing lights, dark theaters. So I thought that was pretty good. It's been a long meeting. I'm just, before I say a couple more things about Terry, we don't get very much happy mail. And so I thought I would just share the cutest little letter. And so this has a little insert that says, Dear GSD Board, my daughter decided to write the letter on her own. I am thankful for your commitment to GSD students. And then I don't know how old she is, and I'm not going to tell her name, but it says, Dear Granite School District Board members, thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do and the time and effort you put into your job. I am very grateful for everything you do. So again, thank you. And I just thought, sometimes as board members, when we're up here making hard votes, and you're upsetting people, or just meetings get long and drone on till 11 p.m. Sometimes you feel like nobody really appreciates, and I think sometimes our teachers feel like they're not appreciated. So when we get a piece of happy mail, I just wanted to shout out to that little girl who wrote us that means a lot. Sometimes we do. Board members need to kind of hear sometimes, we know your job's hard and, hang in there. And people might be mad at us, and that's okay. But we are trying to do the best we can. I said earlier, we are human beings. We're not perfect. We try to do our best thinking, but just know that sometimes it's good to be appreciated, right? Terry, we appreciate you. I cherish the relationship I have with you and will continue to have with you, because I'm still going to check in and be a little annoying. But
just don't raise.
No. I'm going to mail you the minutes next month. You have been a calming influence. There's an underlying security that you bring just in your presence and in your experience, your knowledge of the past 16 years. That was evidenced tonight by your comments, bringing back things that the board did years ago, and it's so helpful for us to be informed, making good decisions by some of that institutional knowledge that you bring. But most important, we just know I treasure you as a friend and our relationship and the friendship above all. So thanks again for all you've done for the district. Appreciate it. Would you like to officially adjourn?
Well, I have a couple of comments. I move that we adjourn.
I just wanted to point out that if we wait 5 minutes, that clock will be right.
I still move that we adjourn.
We have a motion and a second on the table to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Okay, now.